the cool thing about strength is we can input stimulus and cause change, right? We get muscle, we get stronger, and we love that. It's tangible sometimes, it's objective, and we all believe it. Every meal is another opportunity to get better, but obviously running takes a very sustained effort. So it's very different than lifting, where it's like, hit the gas and then pull off. It's like, you got to be 24 hours at least on an ultra.
It's time to sit down, keep it real, and cut the bullshit. Welcome to Table Talk. What's up, guys? We're back with another edition of Table Talk. Today, my guest is Andrew Clayton. Andrew has been an online coach for 10 years. I'm just going to rip through these accolades, right? Then we're going to circle back because I do have a plan with what we're going to do here. The founder of First Called Strength and Performance, pro, strongman, and 2 different weight classes. Is that what it would be considered?
Weight divisions, categories, yeah.
Because it's like 105, then open.
Correct.
Right? So 217 and 2022 world's strongest man on the 105, competed in weightlifting, bodybuilding, ultramarathon, marathon, triathlons, and powerlifting elite, right? So as I was going through your timeline, because I put together a timeline of everybody, right? I'm trying to fill in these gaps, right? Because it was kind of easy to figure out the world's strongest man. Like, boom, that's 2017, 2022. Then I remember when you were out here in 2021, right?
Yeah, August.
You were talking about the ultra marathon, it was bodybuilding. But I remember that, but what I remember more than that is kind of what you were just doing here 30 minutes ago. You and Matt Mills trained fucking for like 7 hours straight.
He probably hates me that day. That day he trained way more than he normally would.
Way more. It just started. I got here late. It just started and just kept going. And it wasn't like it was brutal.
We did a heavy squat, and then normally he'd only do he wasn't even doing heavy squats or deadlifts, but like I was like a month out from the bodybuilding show, so still like able to, be strong enough to do stuff. So we did a heavy squat set or 2, and I'm like, I want a deadlift. I'm an elitefts. So then we did that. And then Goggins was here. So I was like, I got to do a back down set. So I asked him, what do you think I should do to improve my deadlift? He's like, do a back down set, just, barely touch the floor. I'm like, all right, we'll do one of those. And then it was just like hack squat, legs, it's just, I don't know. And then we just got caught up. I probably had like 3 energy drinks out of the cooler. So time just like flew by. It's like 3.5 hours later. We're the last people here somehow.
It was like a machine medley.
Yeah, it was
hack squats, leg press. I think you guys were you wanted to do every one.
Our performance was definitely going down as we went, but it's just fun to do all the machines. You want to just, if you're not losing a pump, it's like you can keep going. And then it was a high carb day for me, so I was just like, justifying the cheat meal to come.
Yeah.
So, which I'm sure we'll talk about more.
Oh, yeah.
I think I might have you beat on the largest cheat meal.
Oh, I'm gonna have to figure out that. Definitely gonna have to.
At least that's what Harris said. He said, "Man, you're really pushing it like Dave," and I had to do an hour cap on mine.
Oh shit!
Because I heard it from your podcast. Said,
yeah, fuck it. We're gonna talk about it now. Tell me. I don't want to forget about this. So what was it? What did you do?
Okay, so
because I thought I changed the rules, right? So did you work with Justin after I did?
Yeah, after you worked with him, early 2000s probably? Yeah. So I worked with him from mid 2020 to like, I think the end of 2021 or early 2022. I learned a ton. I mean, he's just, if you ask him a question, he just knows it. And that's what's like almost annoying is like most of the time it's really simple. And then you ask him a question and he unpacks and you're like, oh, it's just simple because you know it and you know what to focus on. But I think it was the week after being out here in August 2021, it was like 4 weeks out from my contest, and that was the last free cheat meal. Because then after that, I was allowed 1 or 2 cheat meals of like up to 2,000 calories or whatever the cap was.
Yeah.
So I'm like, man, I better go all out. And I'd watched your video, and I was like, well, I can't do that, and I don't like it. So I had I think it was my mom picked up some fast food. I picked up other fast food. I had Panera bagels. I had Krispy Kreme donuts. I had a friend of mine who's actually a client of mine. Eve, so she can get a shout out, sent me money for cheesecake at Cheesecake Factory. So I get cheesecake. Yeah. I have yogurt covered raisins. I have soda. I got something from Sonic. I got something from Taco Bell. I'm trying to think what else I had. I had another burger. I mean, I had the video on my phone, and then I had ice cream. I mean, I ate for almost an hour straight, and that's probably the worst I ever felt because I'm on the couch and I like can't move. And I just kind of like lay to the side. I still can't really move. If I roll too much, I know I'm going to like throw up or just like crap myself. And it was just like, but it's one of those things you're like almost trying to like, cause you know, the suffering's coming of the diet. You're like, just a little bit longer, I can eat this food. Right. And by the end, you don't even want to eat it. It's just cold or stale and nasty. Oh.
Did you have the heartbeat in your stomach?
Yeah, I mean, I probably didn't sleep at all. Somehow I know I trained the next day because I would train back the day after my cheat meal. And usually
Taco Bell probably pulled it all out, right?
I only ate one Supreme. Was it the Crunchwrap Supreme?
I don't think it matters. All that.
Oh, it doesn't matter.
Pull it out.
Oh,
right?
well,
it's like
I think it's the ice cream. It's all the lactose. I don't. It's hard for me to do cheat meals now. I feel like that's one thing I think I differed from Justin. I think it's a personality difference. Is like sometimes it's better for people to get like a small treat here or there, because if you wait for the whole week, you'll binge. And it's not so much that it will affect your diet or like your physique, but like you'll just choose poor food. So like now I'm kind of like relaxed. I'm off of a contest, so I'll just eat like a little extra fruit for dinner, or like, you know, eat some type of candy, but it won't be like a full blown cheat meal. It's just like a little, you know, couple hundred calories, maybe 1,000 calories cheat, you know, added to a normal meal. I feel like that's more conducive to like long-term success. But I think bodybuilding, as we know, is like not healthy towards the end anyways. Yeah. So it becomes like a binge and purge, or like, you know, it's kind of that same type of thing of like, you're waiting for that cheat meal so much that you elevate its expectations so high. And now you're eating stuff, you know, hurts your performance. Like eating ice cream for me does not help my performance past a certain amount of ice cream, because I'm just going to crap it all out. I'm going to feel like crap. I'm going to be up late. So, but it was a really fun experience. And geez, like to see that go to work the next day and get leaner every week, like you drive the scale down, it goes up a little bit, and you just keep doing it, and you just keep getting leaner. It
messed with my head though, because I would do that and I'd be like, I need to do this like twice a week.
Eat the cheat meal. Because it makes you look even leaner.
Like glycogen, right? Because especially when you're carb cycling, like some days I'd look at myself and be like, oh fuck, this is terrible.
I got fat too quick when I did it twice a week. We did it twice a week when I bulked back up, and I think I was able to stay lean maybe 2 months after my bodybuilding show. But we had done a 2 time a week when I first started with him, because I thought I was going to come back to strongman a little sooner than I did.
Yeah.
And I definitely got fat too quick. And he even said it, like my photos look terrible. Like probably the best compliment I ever got from anyone was actually from him. And he saw me in person. He's like, you look a lot better than your photos. And like Instagram is usually the opposite, right? Like people look so good on Instagram, and I didn't know how to get the lighting. I'm posting.
Oh, you're not using the filters. You're not using Photoshop like everybody else.
No, right. But I'm saying like he wanted that view of like, you know, he tells people to take the poor photos for him.
Yeah.
And I didn't even do that. I just took the best photos I could in the hallway in the same spot, blah, blah, blah. And I just look crappy. I got body hair. You know, I'm not a bodybuilder. So most of my, you know, I'm trunk. I'm a strongman. So then when he saw me in person, he's like, man, you're like much bigger, or like more muscular than I thought. Like coming from, he trains like some of the best in the world. I'm like, wow, that really means a lot. But even I noticed I was getting a little too fat when I was doing it twice a week. And he caught on to that pretty soon. But of course, when you're bulking, you kind of got to accept some fat. Yeah. But his approach in general, I really liked, of, you know, allow yourself to put on a little bit of weight, but you can't be miles and miles away, you know, from the stage. You got to be reasonable
with that approach, because it's unrealistic to run that strict type of approach for strength sports or strongman.
Right.
What aspects of that have you kept for the strongman?
So I'll probably start with the thing that I differed with him the most, and working with other coaches too that do performance. And this is not me saying he's wrong. Yeah. His bias is aesthetically pleasing, and he's told me why this works. But if I understand correctly, which he's smarter than me, and I'm probably going to mess it up. For bodybuilding, you would cut the pre-workout and intra-workout carbs first and keep the post. You're trying to recover from the session and facilitate growth. But we know that if you do that, you're going to hurt performance. Yeah. So I'd run into this issue of like, but Justin, like I am doing bodybuilding, but the end goal is to be a performance athlete again. And so why can't we cut the carbs post-workout? Because like, what's the difference in like 120 grams of cereal or 100, or like, you know, or rice or whatever. So that was probably the difference. And then also, I'm sure he just talked about one of his recent posts about for performance carbing up the day before versus for growth having the carbs the day of. So you run into that issue of like, if I have a heavy strongman workout on Saturday, do I carb up Friday and then maybe a moderate carb on Saturday? or do I do high carb on both days? And I think that's where strongmen fall, like especially open strongmen. Why would you not have high carb both days? And that's why those guys get a little softer over time, because why would you take the chance of like not being fully fueled when you're getting ready to train or compete? So you see their physique is kind of like lean, a little softer, contests get a little lean, you know, it kind of just goes in ebbs and flows. But I think if we dialed that in a little more and there was like a good middle ground, I think it would have been perfect. The idea of, you know, having he does 6 meals a day. I sometimes do 5 meals a day on my off days, just so I have less meals to eat. But the idea of like that consistent stream of protein, and just really keep it simple, right? Just rice and meat. I mean, it's simple.
Yeah.
You just keep doing that, repeat it, find a sauce you like, put on top of it, and repeat, and minimize the variables. So all those things, like my analytical side and OCD and, you know, all that I love that part. But then the nuance of like strength sports is like, if I'm training and I'm hungry and I've been training for like 2 hours and I have another strongman event to do, I want to eat a Rice Krispie bar and have some fruit, because I don't want that skill that I'm practicing to go down, because I might not touch that skill for 2 weeks. But from a physique standpoint, I can kind of correct that in a short period of time. So if I overdo the carbs because I'm trying to get the skill of the sport done, I'd rather do that. But for bodybuilding, that'd be silly. It'd be like every time you want to push a harder set, you just add more carbs. You would never get, you know, shredded.
Yeah.
So,
well, I'm going to make an assumption that you're not going to work your way back up into the open again. Is that a fair assumption?
I don't know.
Or anytime soon.
That's fair. Not anytime this year, most likely. I naturally probably hold my body weight a little better, a little heavier. I think the best I've ever felt was probably about 275, 280.
Yeah.
The leanest I ever was obviously when I did bodybuilding. I was about 240 on stage. Walked around pretty comfortably, about like mid 250s. But yeah, I feel healthier, 265, 275, 280. I don't get hurt as much. I'm soft enough where, you know, I can take the impact of strongman and, you know, hard training, but lean enough to where I'm not prevy to like put on a lot more fat. You know, when you're fatter, you get fatter easier. You know how it works.
Well, the reason I'm asking is to stay on the nutrition topic. If you were going to push over 300 pounds again, then you're going to obviously be worried more about a calorie surplus. Where if you're trying to stay within a certain striking range of the 105s, right, then you're going to have to be more diligent on where your calories are going to be and where your nutrition is going to be. Where anybody that's competing in, you know, powerlifting in a weight class or strongman in a 105s or different divisions, you can only let yourself go so far above where that is. So there's got to be some kind of, I don't want to say restriction, that's kind of a bad word, control over where that is. So how do you operate within that controlled range? Because the nutrition's a different answer. If you're trying to get up to 350 pounds, you're still going to be clean, then you're going to throw a bunch of shit on top of it.
Right. You need to be eat enough food. I think I should probably preface this with the fact that I've been this body weight for a while. I've probably averaged, I don't know, 250 to 280 like most of my strongman career. I got up heavier at times, but I never really held up that heavy.
Yeah, okay.
So I think that's something people should realize, like your set point. So my set point is going to be pretty close to 260, 270. So that's not too far off of a 105 class, because I usually would walk around like mid 250s and cut. And so yeah, like I was 265 before I came back to do 105 in 2022. And then I just basically cut down about 10 pounds. So I had some more restrictive dieting. And then I kind of just intuitively knew what I needed to do. I weigh myself every day. I do, you know, kind of, you know, when I see the trends, when you've done something long enough, like I haven't done it as long as Harris has, as far as, you know, being able to look at a photo of something like, oh yeah, he needs to pull this, you know, but like I do have intuition on my own body. And so like, I just like, okay, this is a rest day and you've been really bloated the last 3 days. Let's like not have carbs and breakfast and pull that out. And because I've interchanged so many things on his program and other nutritionists I've worked with, I just kind of know like what to move in and out. And then maybe the last like couple weeks after the last hard workout, I can kind of start reining in the carbs or carb cycling or doing something. So I guess in some ways I'm saying I'm being lazy, but I just monitor the scale and I kind of know how to like get a reaction from the scale from some manipulation. But
so is it scale or is it also visual?
A little bit visual too. Yeah. And we know everything peaks for the contest, right? Everything is peaking for the contest. Everything's in your favor. But the restriction, I probably do more on the rest days. And it's not terrible. I don't feel like I hurt too much to maintain 255, but I definitely feel better and I get bigger and I can respond to more volume of training if I can eat a little bit more and be 265, 275. So I do have to hold myself back in that regard because my appetite, I mean, eating 4,000 calories a day is nothing. Getting up to 6 or 7, a little harder, but like I naturally have a really good appetite and no supplement or anything has really ever affected my appetite. I think that's a big win for me as a strongman because there are guys that like, this sounds mean, but some of the guys in 105 are just not able to eat enough. Like they got the body type and they maybe even have, you know, the skill, but they just don't eat enough and they'll never be an open. But like I could eat enough. So that's one of the reasons why I probably could push into that higher weight class because, I got to weigh 300 pounds to be good. Okay, no problem. Let's eat.
What was your top? 332, I think.
Yeah, I got really crazy. I didn't weigh myself the last couple of weeks because then I didn't want to get my head, but I think I got back from the contest I got hurt and I was 330. So I was probably like 330, 335.
Yeah.
And as a kid or as a teenager going to college, I remember being like a really fat 325. So about 330 was my top end.
Well, going through your watching podcasts that you're in, which this will be a little different podcast because a lot of the podcasts that I watched that you were in, you're just talking about like event recaps of strongman shows that you did.
Right.
I'm like, oh, come on, man. I need to I went
substance.
Like, yeah, okay, cool. He's got 6 brothers. That's what I'm looking for. You know, stuff like that. Right.
Okay.
So, anyhow, but in one of the earlier ones, you had a insane weight gain, I think between the age of 13 and 14. Is that right? Like 100 pounds?
So I went into high school as 14. I think it was between 15 and 16, I gained 100 pounds. And then from like 15 to like 16 and a half, so a year and a half, I gained 150. I basically doubled my body weight in like 18, 20 months or something.
Now, was there a height increase with that?
Yeah, I was kind of a late bloomer. So like freshman year, I grew more. So maybe growing like 2 inches. Okay. Maybe. It definitely was fat. But I mean, when you go on, the information on forums was mainly bodybuilding.
Yeah.
And it was like, what did you put on there? You put like measurements, your body weight and your body fat. And I couldn't do my body fat because I didn't have one of those scales. So I'm like, screw it. I'll get the other measurements up. So, I saw body weight as like manhood, all the tests in strongman, you lift a stone, you're more of a man. The body weight, the higher the body weight got, it almost seemed like the more credit the person had on a forum. You're 300 pounds at 12% body fat. Well, I didn't know 12% was hard to be at 300 pounds. I thought, okay, well, I can't be that fat. But looking back, I obviously was, and it definitely stimulated my appetite. It gave me that habit of like, we got to eat every 2.5, 3 hours, which some strongmen don't have because they eat junk food and they eat 3 meals a day. And there's just really high calorie, junk. So I've always been a little more biased towards, dare I say, a bodybuilding type lifestyle of like, oh no, it's been 2.5 hours. Where's my food? Where some other athletes are a little more chill. And I think long term, that's not the way to go because every meal is another opportunity to get better. So if you're averaging, 6 meals a day, 42 meals a week, and the other guy's averaging like, 32 or 22, the guy with the 42 is going to win eventually in the nutrition department. He just got to figure out the right food and, stuff like that. So even though I got fat, it definitely hurt me. It drove my appetite, and I credit to a lot of success.
What was the peak weight then?
I think that was a 325 when I was 19. 19. Or
before you started training at 14, were there any sports that you were involved in before that?
Yeah. So my parents didn't have a lot of money for all of us kids. So we played at the YMCA, which I think is amazing because I didn't get to specialize. So I never played baseball, which would have been like the sport everybody wants to go in and play, all however many seasons a year there are. But I swam, I played football, played soccer, trying to think if there's any other sports I did. I played basketball. So I felt like even if I was like kind of a husky kid or a little fat at times, I was very well coordinated. I never felt like I couldn't touch a ball and catch it. Like, sounds really funny, but like even like in middle school, I saw kids that were probably like looked but like better athletes than me, and they just didn't have that hand-eye coordination. I'm not saying I'm like the best athlete ever. Like there were things I struggled at, like balance. Like I don't know how to skateboard. That stuff freaked the crap out of me. Like falling, I don't know if my balance on that particular thing is really good. But when it comes to like body awareness for like strongman and like split jerk and like moving around the implements and like molding myself around the implement, I'm very, very confident. I think it came from like so many different sports and like never specializing. And, I was actually really good at swimming. My build is, as far as proportions, is very similar to a swimmer.
How young did you start swimming?
I just swam at a YMCA. It wasn't like super high, but I think it was like 8 or 9.
Okay.
But like literally my mom taught me how to swim, and then I swam down and back in the pool, and they said, you should be on the swim team. And I go to the first practice and swam just under a mile total distance. So I went from down and back in a day to a mile. And I remember, we didn't drink water at the pool for some reason. I just like, so dehydrated, but I thought it was so cool. Swimming a mile, I was like, man, I'm so cool. And I was like 10 years old, 10 years old. So I really enjoyed all the different challenges. And I think when I have kids, I'm not going to let them specialize too soon, because I want them to develop a wide range of abilities and skills and not get overuse injuries. I mean, I've had, other than the major injury we'll probably talk about, I've had almost no injuries, and all my brothers are kind of the same way. And I think a lot of it's credit to rotating sports, eating enough food as a kid, even if it was junk food, like none of us were like malnourished, and just being active. I mean, when you're jumping off stuff and having a trampoline and fighting each other, like you get a little, a little toughened up.
That's what I'm trying to figure out is in early developmental ages, what were you doing endurance wise and stability wise, when the visual acuity wise, when all those
endurance
skills,
was crap, that's for sure.
Yeah. Well, I mean, swimming a mile, but before that.
Swimming might have been good, but running itself was terrible. I didn't run over a mile until I think I was like 20 something years old.
So when did the weight training start, or the strength training? It's 13, 14, but why?
Yeah. So it definitely started with football. You have to be big for football. And I remember in middle school, there was one kid whose brother was already in high school, and he was already learning how to bench. And you think bench press is like correlated with being good at football. And I'm like, man, I don't want to get my butt kicked in high school. So I started, doing a program for that, and found body, and then so I started between 7th and 8th grade. I did. My brother took me to the gym 3 times, 3 times over summer, because only time I could get there. And I thought those 3 workouts improved me so much. You think that stimulus is enough, and maybe the mindset shift was. Maybe I thought it was so cool. But then from 8th grade to 9th grade, I was super focused. Got the ebooks. Did a bodybuilding, bench focused workouts, and I just started eating more. I gained a bunch of muscle, and then I started realizing that I actually got pretty good. That kid I had tried to beat on bench press, we did a drill in practice, and I ran him over 3 out of 4 times. And the coach said, was very much not someone that praised. He was very quiet. Mm-hmm. Probably the only quiet football coach, and I didn't play football very long, but the only quiet coach probably in general I ever had. He literally never said anything until he had praise. So he said, hey, good job. And I was like, and I told the guys in the car I rode home with, and they're like, what? Yeah. He said, good job to you? I'm like, yeah, he just said good job. I beat the guy 3 out of 4 times. It's like, dude, you don't even know what that means. So that was really rewarding. And I think that also is my personality is don't yell at me. I'm trying my hardest. I don't need you to yell at me, because I already know I'm trying my hardest. My expectation is higher than you as a coach. So that type of style really stuck with me. But I didn't play football much longer because no one was really dedicated. And I was at a school that was a very intellectually gifted school. A lot of the class, I ended up switching high schools, but a lot of the kids I originally went to high school with are MIT grads, doctors. They're doing crazy smart people things, and I'm just a meathead. But it was really hard to fit in there. But I stopped football because I showed up the next year, and just people weren't willing to work. Upperclassmen got there late to the summer workouts. Coaches got there late. And I understand some of them are probably volunteering or not making much money. But, when you show up late, that just says a lot about how you feel the program is. And all summer, all I wanted to do is get a ride to the gym all summer. And I would get up early to eat a meal before practice because bodybuilders always said you got to eat before you train. Yeah. Probably wasn't smart to eat 2 cups of oatmeal and 8 eggs before you go run on a football field. But so the first day I went out there, I realized that no one else was very serious about it. And I said, I'm not playing football. I'm already making progress in the weight room. And it was just a matter of time before I I'm Googling, I'm seeing elitefts. This would have been, maybe not when I first saw it, but in the year or so as a freshman in high school, I started finding powerlifting was kind of on the internet. Weightlifting is on the internet. I was trying to find a way to get involved for probably 2 years because it wasn't until my junior year I found the Strongman website. And it looked almost like it was fake. It was just one page. Well, it had a couple pages, but the contest where the contests were was just one page with hyperlinks. And I'm like, if I show up here, are they going to be there? And my dad just happened to have a conference in Orlando where I did my first competition the day before. So we just basically checked out of the hotel and went to the contest. And once I was there, I was hooked. This is.
How did you train for that first one?
So I'd already built a lot of homemade equipment. So Home Depot and Lowe's, and made farmers handles. And I found this piece of wood. There's you had, I don't know how to say this correctly, but when, it's Janine Kroc, right?
It's just Kroc, yeah.
Kroc, yeah. Okay. So like back earlier, there was a image doing lunges in the snow with the branch. I don't know if you remember this. I think it was in muscle.
Oh yeah. I know what you're talking about.
Lunging in the snow is hard work. I was like, do a set of 20. I think it was drop down sets of 20 on squat. It's something, it's something you almost die.
Yeah.
And, I found like a tree branch, and I remember doing lunges with this tree branch on my back. And, I rolled a tire from a construction site about a mile home. It was only about 300-pound tire, but I'm like rolling it hand over hand all the way home. So I just like found ways to train and just did random stuff I saw, World's Strongest Man, but like with whatever I had at home. And then this was when strongman equipment was getting a little more popular. So I bought a log, I bought a yoke, and I bought some molds to make stones about a month or two out from my first contest. Called the promoter. He gave me like a 15, 30-minute call. Still made a ton of mistakes at the contest. But yeah, I was just hooked on it. I think the ease of access, even though it wasn't like the easiest to get into, it's just a hyperlink on a sheet. And then there was an article, and I'm pretty sure it was a Elite FTS article. It might've been a T Nation article, but it said something like, what's the point of deadlifting like 600 whatever pounds if you can't move a couch? I was like, that's me. Mm-hmm. And I don't care about a bar as much. I want to be able to like just be strong and like go be able to lift random things and be really good at it and adapt. And so that like between ease of access, how they phrase that, versus powerlifting versus, and I was just hooked. And then going to that contest, I get 9th out of 10. And even though I'm 16 years old, I'm like, right when the door closes the car, I'm like, I gotta get better at this. Like I sucked. Like I gotta get better. And then
what was it like as a teenager competing in strongman at that time?
Yeah, there were very few teen shows. I think I only did.
I'm just saying in that show.
Right? Oh, that particular one?
I mean, I don't know that culture. I know the powerlifting culture.
Right.
Sometimes it's embraced, sometimes it's not.
There were some of the warm-ups I was doing. I remember somebody looking at me funny when I was warming up for the trap bar. We had like a medley. It was like a trap bar deadlift to an axle to a barbell. And then we repped out the barbell. I remember warming up for the trap bar and somebody kind of giving me a dirty look, but I think it was just like no one really knew what they were doing. Like there was kind of like no one knew what they were doing a little bit. And also like when you compete, you just kind of have blinders up. So when you're doing stupid stuff, you don't even notice the people that are kind of like laughing at you or stuff. Like, I mean, people tell me about, they remember me at my first competition. Then some of them, I don't even remember them being there. And then other ones I do remember because like maybe they had a YouTube channel, like Elliot Hulse was at the first competition I did, and his YouTube channel was still relatively popular back then when it was like only strength camp. But yeah, I definitely made a lot of mistakes. People could tell I was younger and stuff, but I didn't feel very different. And I think going into a competition where you're not supposed to win like benefits you a lot, because like you're not supposed to beat grown men in this sport. So I didn't really have anything to lose. I only had things to gain. And then when you get beat, you get upset and you want to get better. And so like I fell backwards like on a sled, and I just like, clearly I've been neglecting this ability. If I can flip the tire, fine, but I can't finish this. It was a very hard sled drag. Only like one person in every category finished this uphill. It was a tire flip for 5 flips or something, then 50 feet of sled uphill, super heavy, like legit weight sled.
In the snow.
In the snow, uphill, both ways. Also Florida heat, 100 degrees humidity. But no, like those things really expose, like if you suck at that, you need to work on that. And I went home and put some weight on a piece of wood and just drug it in the street. Then I built a sled out of like, old pieces of wood. And yeah, so I just, whatever I was struggling at, I tried to don't make the mistake twice.
Yeah. So that started a 7-year journey until you got your pro open, right? Yeah. So.
Oh no! So actually, I guess it was even less. That was 2009. It was November 2009.
So 5.
So a little, less than 5.
Yes. So that 5-year climb or that 5-year push. Just aside from that, were any of your brothers in the strength training or any? Because you said he took you to the gym a few times.
Yeah. So my older brother Phil was very influential. When I was a teenager, I didn't drive till I was 18. I just didn't really want to do anything except work out, and I just wasn't motivated to have any other freedom. So I just didn't feel like having a license was. It sounds really dumb. I just wasn't very motivated.
I get it.
Yeah. So and in a lot of ways that probably I feel like it stunted my growth as like a young adult. But I think how do I put this? I think I said in the post really well, like where I am now is because of doing strength stuff. And it's like almost like I'm reaping the benefit that's delayed from making all these mistakes when I was younger. So it wasn't till maybe even now in the past couple of years that like the plan kind of worked out. But up until 5 years ago, you'd have been like, you're an idiot, you know? So I've finally made it almost look like it worked. But so I didn't have a license. He took me to the gym every Tuesday, and that was the day we'd pull out like the Muscle Tech supplements and take the pre-workout. We'd be amped out of our freaking mind, squat, deadlift, 20 rep squats was something we did for a long time. It was just like, see who could die first. Terrible form, but whatever, man, just grit, and we had ridiculous things. One time we were like doing 50 rep squats and 50 rep tire flips. It's some of it's really dumb from like a skill standpoint or work or like recovery. But,
well, my question for that would be, I mean, I did a lot of stupid shit like that too, but I didn't know any better, but I still would have, I might have still done it anyhow.
Yeah.
Did you know better when you were doing it, or did you just not know any better? It's like, this is hard. This is what we want to do. Because nowadays it's easy for people to know that's probably stupid to do.
Well, like a good example would be on the squats. I didn't know I butt winked a lot and didn't know how to brace. That wasn't, you remember, like I've heard you talk about Westside and how arching was a big, like how arching is different and, gear versus raw. And you have all these conflicting things. Cause even in 2009, 2010, I was still getting influence from geared lifters.
Yeah.
It was still prevalent enough to like think that you had the arch and, so, but then I was watching weightlifting a lot. I really respected weightlifting. So they squat ATG. So I'm like trying to find this form. It's just butt wink, relax at the bottom, and didn't have my lats tight. And I thought, because I have like the anatomy of strength training, like it's like mainly illustrations, really good, like anatomical book I got from my dad, but it shows deadlift works the whole back. I'm like, I don't need to do any other back stuff. I didn't know the upper back was like the core of strength sports. So my upper back is weak. I'm not using my back to squat. I'm rounding my back, and I'm doing 20 rep squats, which they're not high quality after freaking 6 because you're doing like 80% of your max and the sets take 3 minutes. So I did a lot of dumb stuff, but like looking back, it gives you like a mindset, or just like, at my last contest, there was a tire flipping. Tire flip's been out of strongman for a while. And when it comes back, people tear their biceps. People get upset. People don't like it. It's odd. It's awkward. It's not like you don't know exactly how much it weighs. And I just kind of said to my brother, I was like, hey, you remember when we did those 50 rep tire flips? And it was kind of like our thing of like saying like, yeah, they don't stand a chance. And that's really what it was. Like, I have this little thing in the back of my head. Like, I've already done 50 reps of, it doesn't matter what the tire weighs.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what that tire is in the 105 class. It's not going to be heavier than my max. And so it just gave me a lot of confidence. So maybe it doesn't give you skill. Maybe it doesn't give you like work capacity, or maybe you hurt yourself in the process of doing it. But later on, you have like something in your back pocket to just grab and be like, boom, throw it on the table. And like, yeah. And I think that's the best thing. And just training with my brothers, just good moments. And, when I'm going to change the topic slightly. When I won the contest most recently that I was in, I think it was really nice for my brother to be there, because like, I'm going to get freaking emotional on this podcast, because like no one believed in us when we were at the little YMCA that's only about 3 miles from where I live now. The trainers didn't believe in us. They kicked us out. They treated us poorly. Some of the grown men there we only had one squat rack, would kind of bully their way in taking the squat rack from us. And it was kind of like,
why did they kick you out of curiosity?
I brought chains in.
Yeah.
And I brought a foam roller in. And then I think the final straw from this trainer was I brought it was playground rope. There was little pieces so I could train grip. Back then everything was DIY. So they were like, DIY grip was really big. So I tried the deadlift with these little pieces of rope around the bar so I could squeeze the rope together and work my grip. He's like, get out. I'm like 15 years old. I don't have a license. And I was like,
were you stronger than he was?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, absolutely. I was probably a jerk little kid, but like, I love lifting.
Yeah, no, I get it.
So it's tough to be kicked out when you like love lifting, but it felt good to reward my brother for that, because he was there through a lot of that. And
back into it. I mean, so as you're going through that stage, because I want to see something kind of similar like that. It was all cool until I started to get strong. You see what I'm saying? Like it's at YMCA, it's probably all cool until you started become stronger than what average is.
And you get hurt or pull something.
I don't know if it's that, or if I don't know if it's that, the people at that time who are running it don't like their ego.
Oh, that part. Oh, yeah.
There's a lot of different reasons. Maybe I wasn't fucking brash little asshole kid too, at the same point in time, but would find myself in some predicaments like that, not to that degree, but it would be like, here's where you train, but you can't train here.
Right.
You know, so just stay with these other guys, which was fine because they were better anyhow. So did you run into that in other places as well, or just there? Especially because you said that when you were training with your brother, how many years did you guys train together?
So he probably took me to Y on and off for better part of maybe 2 years. And then I kind of got rides from my parents, trying to think. And then in college, I obviously
was he training when he took you?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
So my older brother Phil and actually my younger brother Jonathan are playing D1 football. They both did some strongman with me, just not to as high of a level.
Yeah.
The genetics are in my family to be, if anything, it's just being stubborn. But it's also, I think we do have some decent genetics as far as like being resilient and our mindset. We were just raised with having a mindset of just, you know, like go after it, be really stubborn. And that rubs people the wrong way. But like I see it in my other brothers, they're like not going to back down on something. It might be, you know, not even physical related. They're just like, no, I'm not going to take that crap. Like,
yeah. So they were enablers for you at the younger age. Because when you're coming, I know how this is as a kid coming up. A lot of people want to tell you why you shouldn't be training. It's not good for your life. You need to be doing this.
Right, you hurt your back, you rip your knee apart.
You know, so it's good to have, I mean, were they the guys that are like, fuck them? This is why.
Oh yeah. I mean, my brother never did it. Like if anything, my brother believed at certain times, he believed in me more than I did. My older brother. And I think even when, you know, your parents are always going to be a little more realistic.
Of course, yes.
So there were times my parents were probably trying to rein it in, but I don't think they ever put the hammer down enough to like completely crush. Like some kids, I think their parents crush their dreams and maybe they don't know it, but they just put the hammer down a little too hard when the person is just a little too fragile. I don't think that ever happened. Obviously I had pushback from people. And like I said, if it hadn't worked out to where I'm running my own business as a coach and like making money as a professional athlete and like, you know, I'm still healthy. Like, you know, if it didn't work out in that way, people would say, I told you so. So yeah, maybe they are a little right, but it did work out. And so I'm glad that my family didn't push back on me too much or those people who were in my circle didn't push back too much. Because what if I had gone the easy route and gotten a job right out of college with my degree and made less money and been unhappy and never saw I got my pro card in strongman right before I graduated. I actually almost got it the show before that when I wasn't even 21. I thought it'd be so cool to get a pro card before I could drink legally. But I graduate college after I'm a pro strongman. And what if I had gone the easy route and never saw all these great things I could have done and influence people and help people because I went the easy route and what people told me to do. And it's hard to like do that because you don't, it's always a gamble. And luckily from my point of view, it's paid off tremendously. And I'm very, very thankful for it.
It's a weird thing with that because you can use that as fuel, right?
Oh, absolutely.
It can push you, but at the same time, you can think of it as, you know, if you're holding a grudge against somebody, you know, that's like drinking poison. Yeah. You know, and hoping they die.
Kill the other person. Yeah.
Right. And so, but it can also be fuel, you know, to be able to push through. So especially if you have brothers that you're talking about that are enabling, you know, and being able to offset that. So with this last show that you were talking about, it was local, right? So it was closer for you?
It's closer for me. Yeah, it's supposed to be like an international show, but it's in the States. It was in Hilton Head, South Carolina. Yeah. Hilton Head.
Has he been to your other shows?
Yeah, my brother came actually to my first international show in Africa. And then he competed with me a couple times and probably he went to some major ones. He went to when I won Teenage Nationals, which was probably in a lot of ways, like the first validating show, right? When you win a national of anything, it validates that like you should be there. So that was kind of like my moment of like, hey, this strongman thing might work out. This was in 2011. And then he was there when I attempted to get my pro card in 2013. I didn't, but in 2014 I did. So yeah, he was there
for that one.
He didn't. So I was here. It was at the Arnold.
Yeah.
He wasn't here for that, but he was obviously like,
oh yeah, of course.
Yeah, obviously communicating with me.
But I guess where I'm going is this last one that you had that he was at the first time that he actually saw you win something big like that.
I wouldn't say it's the first big one, but I think it was really, you know, it's on ESPN3 and it's one of the biggest shows after coming back from an injury and, you know, kind of being counted out. And we had some spats back and forth, you know, as all brothers do. Sure. So I think it was, like I said, like it was that full circle of like YMCA, ESPN. I told you we were going to do it. and then he's handling me, and we're just, everyone in the room, and sounds extremely cocky, but it is what it is. Everybody in the room knew who the Clayton brothers were, because he was loud. He was in my ear yelling at me, and then I'm out there winning a lot of the events. And I think that was just such a cool feeling to be, nobody's in this gym in a little hole in the wall YMCA with one squat rack, to be on ESPN3 and your brother's on ESPN3 with you. I just think that full circle thing is just like, that's like the dream. I still have the original power rack we trained on in my driveway right now at my house. It's outside. It's got rust on it. Somebody wanted to pick it up for scrap. I'm like, no, I got this when I was 15 years old off Craigslist. I won both my pro cards on it. I'm going to give it to my kid. And they're going to be like, why the heck I got to train this piece of crap? I'm going to be like, you're going to train this piece of crap because this is where it started for us. So, yeah.
With what did it look like after you won? I mean, what was the conversation that you had with him?
Oh, with him? I don't know. It's one of those things, like, I think as brothers, you don't really sometimes say words. I think it's just kind of like a feeling of just like knowing, like, it worked out. I mean, I obviously thanked him, and, I made comments, like I said, do you remember, all those hard workouts, or you remember going to the Y on Tuesday? Like, I think as brothers, it's hard to say like, hey man, I really love that you were here for this, but like my actions, I think, show like, hey, like I really appreciate you being here, because like without you being here, it would not have gone as well as it went. And having him there, and then his brother, and my mom, and also my girlfriend there, and a few of my other brothers came as well, and were more like in the audience because they don't know as much about strongman. They can't handle, they can't be up close in the area. But having them all there was just like really surreal, and it was like definitely like the best support system I had, which, as you know, it's hard to get a team to work well together. And I think we got it buttoned down like pretty freaking tight. And I don't think anything was going to stop us, because I have my ability, but then I have all their help. And you're only as strong as like a weakest link. And I didn't have any weak links in my team, and I wasn't going to be the weak link. So yeah, I'm just really thankful for all their support. I can't say enough for.
When did you come to that realization that you're only as strong as your weakest link? Because that didn't start at 14 or 15. I
mean, I'm weak. So I probably am the weakest link, because, there are issues with myself that probably caused me not to be the best athlete. I've said it before, maybe not even in podcasts, but just to people, like, the only person that can beat me is me. Either I'm going to be lazy, or I'm going to do things that aren't conducive to the goal, or I'm going to be impulsive. Those are, to be a champion, you have to have impulse control, and you have to delay that gratification. And there are times I didn't do that, and there are times I did a great job of that. So I don't know when I came to the realization that, like, it's all my fault. Like, if it doesn't work out, it's my fault. And it's still a struggle. Like, I still want to blame people. I'm still guilty of it. I'm still complaining. It's just like, you're constantly fighting these two, like, internal things of like, I'm very, very grateful. I freaking cried on the way to the airport today, because I'm just thinking, like, this is a pretty cool experience. And like, it came true. Like, not just being on this podcast, but just like, man, I make money doing the sport that I love to do. That's pretty cool. And then there's the other part of me that wants to complain about all the problems and all the negativity. So I think it's always that fighting that. But I guess probably in the last couple of years, I probably had the most like growth and self-awareness and realization of where I'm at as like a person, and some of like the internal struggles and just all those things going on. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that goes on. I mean, as you know, it's your identity. It's what drives you. So not only is it your identity, but what happens when you take it away? Are you still going to be driven to do other things? So yeah, it's a very multifaceted element of me, I guess.
I had a question that I was going to follow up with that, but then you just sidetracked that there for a minute, because with that identity and all the other things that kind of play into that, you're aware. You're still doing it, right? Mm-hmm. But you're aware that it is this big part of your identity. Mm-hmm. Most aren't aware of that while they're still doing that. They're aware of that when it's removed.
Yeah, it's too late.
Well, they have to, it's not too late, but they just have to deal with it, right? It's different when you have the self-awareness to know that there's this and that, right? The negative, the pro, whatever you want, the fuck everybody, and be grateful that you have what you have, right?
It's the two wolves. I mean, there's a post on my Instagram about just like being a hypocrite. And I think it's like the same thing of like, having self-control and tempted by things. It could be anything. You're always fighting, angel and demon. Like there's always these things. And a lot of times people will judge you based on when you demonstrate characteristics of maybe the, quote unquote bad side, but we're always fighting. It's all a spectrum because no one's white or black as far as good or bad. We're somewhere in the middle. And I think that's what it is. Even as an athlete, is like trying to fight off, you're using all this like adrenaline, sometimes it's anger, it's emotion. And those things are very, volatile and explosive, and they're great, but if you can't control them, I think it's to be a good athlete, you have to get really close to that threshold. And I think I've definitely crossed that threshold, and it's gotten to be where I'm a freaking, I guess I'll say I'm an asshole, I'm a jerk, and then I rein it in. So you're always, to be a high level athlete, you're teetering on the extremes all the time, and it's finding that line. And so, yeah, there were times I crossed it. I was too much of a jerk. Too much of a jerk or a prick or whatever. And then now, as I'm more self-aware, I try to rein it in. And I'm gonna maybe sidetrack your conversation, but like, that's part of the reason why, I understand that at some point I'll have to like fully retire from strongman. I've already kind of stepped back from weight class because I feel like that was pushing me. As I had to cut weight, just how I felt competing in that class, just I wasn't having fun anymore. And that really killed it for me. I wasn't having fun doing strongman or training for events. I was just getting angrier because I had a point to prove. So I'm very self-aware of that and what I'm fighting and stuff. It's just to be good as an athlete, like you have to teeter on the extremes. And for me, that's explosive rage, like just bring it all out. And I've gotten really good at reining it in, but like when I let it go, it's very obvious that I still have that as, as motivation and fuel.
I think most do. I think being around strength athletes my fucking entire life since I was 13, in fairness, there are some that I don't know, that they don't display it ever, but I have to still think that the demons are still battling in their head. That's just a little bit different. But the way I would address what you're talking about is you don't know what overtraining is until you overtrain. You didn't know the 50 rep sets of squats were actually stupid as fuck until you did a whole lot of 50 rep squats. You don't know what that threshold is until you cross it enough times that you have to pay consequences to be able to know, fuck, maybe that was too much. You don't know how much is too much psych until you get over psyched up for an event and you fuck it up for the dumbest little thing. That's called experience. That's age and experience and competitiveness and trying to fucking control those demons. And I think that's for most that are honest, that is a big part of the mental game, is controlling those fuckers and actually leading them. Right. Not just controlling them, but leading them to do what you want to fucking do and to be able to push that way. And sometimes, you're going to step over the curb, but unfortunately, some people will probably judge you for that forever, which is kind of fucked up, right? Because they're taking one moment in time and trying to judge somebody on the totalitarianism of their entire life, and
they're trying to say that people don't change. And that's probably that's the part that is really in a sport that, and I'm guilty of this too. Like I'd probably judge people even though they've changed, but I guess the cool thing about strength is we can input stimulus and cause change, right? We get muscle, we get stronger, and we love that. It's tangible sometimes, it's objective, and we all believe it. Like no one goes in the gym and is like, nah, you ain't getting stronger. Doesn't matter what you lift, you won't get stronger. No, like eventually you will if you do the right training program. And then people think that you start reading more books and start being around better people, better influences, or you cut out negative habits, or you do X, Y, Z, and the human being doesn't become better. It's hard for me to believe that people can't improve. And it's a very, concrete, like it's very, I can't say the inverse. Yeah. I believe people are very plastic, and I think and that's what we're learning. And I don't know why we're still caught in like, once a person is, that's all they are. Like people can transform into being different things. I mean, even in my sport career, I did different things and people think that's really cool, but like the body is just like,
it's stupid as fuck, right? It's stupid as fuck because
people can adapt and they change.
Of course they do.
Yeah.
One of the guarantees in life outside of death and taxes is change. We all change. Every fucking day we change. Our body changes. So you eat too much food, you get fucking fat. You don't eat. We're all in a constant process of changing because of the experience and everything we say. So when I hear people will say things like, no, they'll never change. I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? Tomorrow they're going to be a day older. Right. That changed. At the very basic cellular level, there's change. Now I get what they're saying, right? But experience changes things. Trauma changes things. A lot of people, it's stupid, right? The people that stay in that dogma, right? I worry more about those people that say that person never changes, that person never changes, because one thing that I'm being displayed right with that whole situation is you're the one that's judging everybody else. So I'm more concerned about you than the person that's actually getting shit done.
But imagine being around someone that never changed. Like imagine having a friend, and not saying they're doing anything negative, but they're just doing they're just exactly how they are all the time. Like they never had growth anywhere. They work the same job forever. Then, you know, they're in the gym, but they're never getting bigger, never getting stronger. I mean, yeah, they're going to age, right? Yeah. We already agreed on that. But that person's either very boring or like people don't want to be around that person. Like you don't want to date that person. You don't want to, you know, you don't want to be working in their business or work with them in a business. So like if you're not evolving and changing, like we don't like that person, but that person might not be doing anything negative. It's just they're literally staying in the same spot,
which is going backwards.
Which in a way is going backwards because as you age, you hope you're climbing something or moving towards something. So it's like I don't know. It's to say you can't change would say you could stay exactly the same, and like, you can't exactly. So I'm basically like, what's the like reverse engineering that logic?
Yeah. I mean, you can't. You go forward or you go backward. It's impossible to stay exactly the same,
right?
In anything. Business, life, any of this shit, you're either forward or backward. Anyway, somebody proved to me the difference, that there's always the slight up or down, right? But as far as what you're talking about is evolving as an athlete and evolving as a coach, yeah, that's gonna for those people that are being aware, paying attention, the more experience they're gonna have, the better they're gonna be. The better coach they're gonna be, the better athlete they're gonna be, the better their ability to reach their full potential, whatever that is. Like the genetic thing is always like a weird thing for me too, because you know I've said in the past, like how do you know if you have good genetics or not if you never fucking tried?
Right.
You don't, and then what does that mean? Like physical genetics, mental genetics, the ability to, you know, absorb drugs better than somebody else.
I liked your analogy, like probably 5-10 years ago, you talked about the kid that doesn't have good genetics in middle school, high school is put to the side and he has to do more drills and practice and he develops that skill. And the guy that gets to play in middle school or high school, he's playing.
Yeah.
And then what happens when he goes to college? Well, that guy that got all the praise in high school, everyone's like him in college because they're all good. And he doesn't get that immediate gratification anymore. And the guy that's been doing the extra drills and eating the extra meals and on the weekends doesn't party, now he's like, oh, it's almost an even playing field. And then one day it is an even playing field and he steps up and he gets put in. So that's kind of like, I remember hearing that and thinking like, maybe I wasn't put in more drills, but I thought that was kind of like me, is that I was never the first person people picked. And I'm like, inside, I'm like, oh my God, coach, I'm going to work so hard. You know, like I just want to put the jersey on, and they'll pick someone else that can, you know, hop over a house or, you know, a great sprinter and do all this crazy stuff. But like, you can't judge that mental aspect. And I think when I start coaching athletes, I actually don't work with them anymore. There's an athlete and he wanted to do like a 400-pound axle clean and press. And that's kind of like one of the things I'm good at. And he told me, and I don't even know what the comment was. Like I try really hard not to do things that coaches did to me that were negative. And I don't know how I said it or if it was just very frank, but he's like, yeah, I know I'm kind of like fat or soft, but like I'm a really good athlete. And I thought it was really funny because I didn't insult him, but I like believed him. I said, I like that because like he did look a little soft and you wouldn't pick him first out of the lineup. But man, when I watched his training videos and being explosive and adapting to, you know, strongman is adaptive sport. When I watch his training videos and I can read between the lines, I can see the hunger. I'm like, I'm picking him first. And I love that. I love seeing someone that doesn't look the part and then you just hear their mindset and then you kind of test them on their mindset and they don't back down. And you're like, okay, this guy needs 5 years and he beats whoever you pick over here for sure. So I really like that. If
you can spot that, 100, that's always the case.
Oh yeah,
I would say that's most people.
And how do you spot it? And how do you spot it? Yeah, it's tough.
It's hard to. If you've been around it and you've been around it, you can kind of see it.
And that's not to say he's going to go really high though. I mean, he's going to be better than average, but to get to like world's strongest man level, you talk about these other things like how do they handle drugs, eating a lot? Do they get the opportunities when they're healthy or do they get them when they're hurt? You know, are they, good for TV? And there's so many, you're trying to thread this needle through all these different directions. So he might be really good, but he might only be a top amateur or a low level pro. Yeah.
Things change where we'll get to that. Yeah. Things do change as soon as after you turn pro. So let's 2014, right? That's when you got your open pro card, right? Mm-hmm. Tell me about that. What was that show like?
So I just done, So 2013, I did nationals and I got third. And so they only give pro cards at this time, only give to the winner of the show. So if I had done one deadlift rep, I zeroed the deadlift. I didn't have a deadlift suit. I didn't train on the car deadlift. I was in school. This is one of the reasons why I'm bitter towards school, because I never got to go train with the training crew because I was so busy interning. I'm like, I just needed one rep. Mm-hmm. So some of the same guys went to Arnold because you won the Arnold Amateur. You got to go to the Arnold Pro, which I'm sure you're very aware of. It's really prestigious. Actually, I think it still pays one of the highest in strongman. It's considered the more strength-oriented strongman test. So that's like a big deal. But if you made the stage, it was cool. You got to be on the main stage. And then if you got top American, you got a pro card. So I go there, and I think my original goal was I got to be in the finals. And I remember my brother Phil being like, you got to be top 5. I was like, yeah, whatever. Go in the first event, tie for the win. Go in the second event, I think I got highly, I'm like sitting in first or second place pretty much the whole time. And I went against Mateusz Kiełkowski from Poland, and he's one of the best strongmen now in the world. He's had some injuries with lat and tricep, but he's just a stud. He's a true strongman athlete. And ironically, he loses because of deadlift. He'll win 4 out of 5 events and he won't do well in deadlift. But I got second place to him, and I kind of gamed it because going into the finals, I knew I wasn't going to be able to catch him, or I could risk losing my pro card. So I kind of was very safe, but I did have an event where I think I placed 12 positions lower than him on Husfeld carry. And so if you take that one out or have us tie on that, I think I would have won the overall, but like that would have been like 50, 100 more feet carrying it. And again, he's a stud athlete, like endurance, speed, everything. But I got second place to him on the farmer's walk, which if you've seen it in Columbus, he's the best frame carrier, like bar none for speed. So I got second place to him. So I felt pretty good about that. But yeah, so I get my pro card. It's very surreal. I think that year was kind of a down year as far as like publicity though. The year before was really hyped up. The year after they kind of put more media into it. So, you have this expectation of what going pro is going to feel like. And because I started at 16, I knew it was going to be a long time. I'd heard that, all these rules, at least 10 years, at least 10,000 hours. So I'm expecting, maybe by 26, I'm a pro. Mm-hmm. And then I had to get this mindset in my head, like maybe it's going to take me till I'm 36. I think I made a Facebook status at the time is like, either I'm going to be 22 or 32 or 42, or, I basically was saying I'm going to keep trying. And then I get it at 21. So it kind of came a little early. And then I had this expectation to be this grand thing. And it was cool. I got to be on a podcast. Somebody interviewed me, and, but I knew I had to kind of stay on the gas as far as making my first pro debut be a big deal. You're only as relevant as you compete. So, I went to America's Strongest Man that year, and I did pretty well. There was an interesting score change at the end. I thought I got third. They did a new rule, which they didn't really tell us. There are some arguments that happen in rules meetings, as you can imagine, coming from powerlifting, people yelling and screaming. And, we didn't go over the rules for the stones. So they ended up split timing the stones. So they actually posted that I tied the last event, and then they kind of said, no, you didn't. You actually got second, and that bumped me down to 4th. But still, I was 4th out of 10, a rookie, 21 years old. I'm just coming on the sport, and I felt really good about it. But yeah, it's just hard to stay relevant. And I wasn't the WWE 6'4", 350-pound person. I'm like 6'1.5". I round the 6'2". I'm like under 300 pounds. I'm kind of soft looking. I just looked very normal. And then I'm young. I'm not very. And at the time, I had almost no muscle on me, so I don't market well. And when you're looking at someone who goes to World's Strongest Man, you're looking at big bodies. You're looking at big body weight. You're looking at freaks. So I didn't. Not only did I not place in, say, the top 3 or win, but I also didn't have any type of it factor yet. And that, I think, definitely kind of hurts your momentum as an athlete, is when you don't have that it factor, right out of the gate of being like a freak, then people don't really want to see you in some international shows because you're not 6'6", and people don't want to take pictures with you or whatever. Yeah. So,
well, it's kind of like in powerlifting, any other sport, I would imagine. Once you get to the higher level, it's like the Wizard of Oz. You get to see who's behind the curtain.
I heard you use that reference.
Right? And it's just not what you think, right? It's like you're on the trail, you're on the, then all of a sudden you get there and you're like, the fuck is this? But it is what it is. That's how it is, and because that with strongman, it becomes entertainment. It kind of goes.
It's a TV show.
It goes from a sport to entertainment. Where years ago, and I don't know if this is true or not. We don't have fact checkers and shit like this, but you might know that.
Owen's not helping us. I
know. But I think for a while it was when it was metrics and they were having it on ESPN that it was actually they were paying for that half hour or 1 hour as a commercial. So it wasn't ESPN more or less filming it, but it was a paid commercial. So in other words, they were paying for that time to be able to put that out there. Again, that's what I heard, right? I don't know if this is bullshit or not, but that's because
they sponsored it so long, and I never even tried their supplements, but apparently they were not very good tasting. I don't know, but
I don't know. But at that point, if that's true or not true, it's I don't know. But at that time, it made me realize, at least with that, oh look, I get it. They got to have people on there, that are good. Then if you go way back, they were bringing in NFL players,
right?
From the very jump,
70s and 80s. Yeah, they had basically guys coming off the season and just hopping in and.
I mean, you could say from the very start of the whole thing, it was a show. That's how it started,
right?
Was that so kind of naive to think it's not going to be that way now? But there's some of those things you can control, some of them you can't, and it's. I hate to say it is what it is, but I often wonder as an outsider looking in, like, is this person not invited because they only have 896 Instagram followers compared to this person who's got 40,000 Instagram followers? When if you kind of look at them as the outsider, they kind of look like they rank about the same to me.
Right. They do have ways to get to these shows that at times have been very cut and dry. They still have, I don't know how they put this in their rules meeting, but they basically say like, we might be looking for other people, aka if they look cool. Definitely happened. I'm still of the belief that if you're the best and you have your name at the top of the list, you get invited. And most of the time that's true. Of course, now we got more for a while, strongman in the United States is only one federation. When you look at it from powerlifting's point of view, like in some ways that monopoly was actually a benefit to us because you were only compared. I mean, there were very few unsanctioned shows because why not? You got insurance. Well, I don't know if you had insurance early on, but there'd be other perks and you got to be on the website, stuff like that. Now people do multiple federations and then unsanctioned is really popular because some of these people just want to try it. They don't want to go to nationals. So it's almost becoming, it's experiencing some of the same problems that maybe powerlifting was experiencing. I know powerlifting's gone through way more evolutions. It had gear multiply and then raw. And then, you got this issue with mono and sleeves and different federations. And then open powerlifting opens the gates. So actually tracking it never stops. Right. Yeah. And strongman's kind of going to get to that.
Yeah.
And it becomes, about the money, and participation drives money. But I'm sure I just lost my train of thought. Yeah. I have enough caffeine. What was the original question?
Well, we're talking about how you went from one federation into probably how many federations are there now?
Oh yeah. So, usually the federation, if you're at the top, you're able to get invites to high level shows. But right now in the United States, there's primarily two like amateur federations. I guess you could say there's kind of like a third, but I think of like two as far as like local shows, and then you have unsanctioned. So let's say there's like 4 different ways kind of to do strongman as a whole. Yeah. 3 of them kind of allow you to go to bigger shows. And those bigger shows being sometimes international or world's strongest man. And then I guess anyone could technically pay, right? Anyone could put prize money up. So that's kind of become a thing. Sometimes it lures people in, sometimes it doesn't. Cause if you put a big prize purse up, but no one's going to show up, they kind of think, are they going to be able to actually pay that? Stuff like that. But no, most of the time they do take the best, but it's tough because it's not even looking from my own point of view. I mean, I've been with a lot of these guys. I've been training a long time, and I want to see my friends who I believe to be of the caliber to be at World's Strongest Man or be at the Arnold or stuff like that. I want to see them go. And even this past year, there was someone who I hold really highly, and he got to go World's Strongest Man, and he earned it. He earned it 100%, got first place in the competition. He earned it. And I love it. And there are guys that maybe they can't win those qualifier shows because qualifiers are sometimes a little lighter. So it's very hard to figure out, like, I was very good, and I think I am still very good at a moderately weighted strongman contest, high level amateur, low level pro, because I'm speed and endurance. But you go in the maximal, like you go max deadlift, I'm losing points. I might not even get a lift. So I didn't do well on the Arnold circuit because I couldn't exploit my gifts. But I did really well. If you just bring the weights down like 5% where I can actually move them, I'm going to beat you on speed. And some people would say that's not real strongman. And it depends, like, World's Strongest Man is a little bit different than the Arnold. There's more moving in World's Strongest Man. But yeah, it's really tough because some guys that would be great at World's Strongest Man can't qualify for it because they're not good at the qualifier. And then some people be great at the Arnold, but the qualifier is too light. So they're really good at static, but the qualifier is too light for them, and now there's just too many people. There's too many freaks out there, and there's too many Americans. And when you're trying to have a world show, you got to include other countries. So I'm really hoping, like, even if I don't ever make it, I just hope there's probably a list of like 5 to 10 guys that I've competed with in open that I'm like, man, please let them get to World's Strongest Man. And I hope they say that they're not worth being there, because at least half the list, if not more, are going to be like, oh, really? And they're going to just drop everything they're doing and prioritize World's Strongest Man. And that's what I was willing to do, is drop everything. It's just, it sounds really bad. I mean, I got the opportunity. I got to go to Giant Slide to try to qualify, but if someone said, hey, Andrew, in 1 year, you're going to do World's Strongest Man and we can pay you some small amount of money just, so I can eat. Mm-hmm. Then I would drop everything and do it, because I would respect that opportunity to that degree. It's just, unfortunately, that opportunity isn't given to everyone. Not everybody can be a sponsored athlete or be part of the, part of the company or whatever. So
I think with strength sports, I've learned over 40 years, where the fuck it is, there's two ways to look at it, where there's one way to look at it, act like there are two in that one big sport with all the federations, just combine all the stuff. Mm-hmm. You got the top 1-2%, right? And then you have everybody else. So that top 1 or 2% that are going to compete at the highest levels, that could potentially make money from it, and all the other kind of stuff. That probably makes up 1 or 2% of everybody that competes in strongman or powerlifting or bodybuilding or whatever it is. So they live in it's a bubble. They're in a little bit different bubble, right? So the issues, the drama, all the stuff that they have in that bubble is in that bubble, right? That's getting behind the curtain, right? So that's in the actually house of the Wizard of Oz, or wherever the fuck it is, right? Now you have everybody else that's still on the trail, right? The road to the Oz, right?
They haven't figured it out yet. They're just,
well, it's not that they haven't figured it out yet. I think that their perception and what they see and how all this is all organized and set up is different for them, right? Where when I look at these things and I can hear these issues, I'm like, okay, where does this issue fall? Does this fall on the trail, or does this fall in the house?
Interesting.
Right? Because I'm being retired and been through all this. I'm more worried about the trail, because the trail changed your life.
Yes.
Right? So I'm more worried about that 13, 14, 15,
so
16.
We're caught up in all the negativity behind the curtain, unfortunately, when it's still changing people's lives on the trail.
Is it more so?
Or should be more so.
It should be way more so. And I think if you step back and you look, like in the castle, look out the window, right? You look out the window and you're like, holy shit. There's still people that are pulling their first deadlift, or there's still people that just did their first farmer's walk and fucking completed it. Or there's the person that just went through chemo, beat cancer, then wanted to do a strongman show just to validate the fuck that they're back. That all is still happening. And that's that 99, 98% and anybody under the sport. So I separate and like, here's that, right? Where this is always going to have its bullshit. It always has. The top 2% issue. There's always. And you hope over time, a lot of the issues get replaced with new issues. Mm-hmm. Like last thing you want to do is just have more fucking issues piling upon the previous issues. Where in powerlifting, it seems like a lot of the issues at the top over the past have been pretty much resolved, but there's new ones. As long as there's new ones, that's progress, right? Because it doesn't go back to stay.
It means somebody found a solution to those other problems.
Yeah, or they find that, so somebody found a solution to the problem, but then somebody else figured out a loophole for that solution to be able to still manipulate the problem. But it's still trying to be resolved in some way.
Gotcha.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
And now on the back end of all that, is it getting better for that beginner? Has it become easier for the person to enter their first strongman competition?
That's what's hard for me, I think. Like you said, because you've seen, I'm not to your point because I'm not fully out of it, but I think what you're kind of saying is, so my athlete side and my coach side. So my athlete side, there are frustrations of how things are organized. And even from like an athlete looking at the point of view, knowing the behind the curtain for my clients.
Yes.
A good example would be like the strongman, everything is inflating, but there's certain strongman shows I'm like, man, that's a lot of money for that strongman show. And I start thinking, are they trying to make a lot of money off this? Is this a money grab? You know, because anybody can enter anyone. There's no, you know, I think you just have to be over 12, right? And maybe 16. So everybody.
Yeah.
But then that person might be willing to spend $150, $200. That person might be willing to spend, like, I mean, I coach and I'm not cheap per se. So they're willing to get a coach and willing to buy all the sleeves and buy all the equipment. And these things are not cheap. But then what if that helps their mental health or like, you know, like all these other things. So I do kind of frame like you were saying is like, maybe the trail is better than I think. And the difficulty for me trying to bridge those two things is there's ease of access, and the ease of access again as strongman is better than ever before. I mean, there are people that have never built their own equipment, and that would have been unheard of 10 years ago. Yeah, definitely 15 years ago. And then you have resources like obviously, you know, internet resources that are being provided. You have ease of getting a contest. Like where I live, the closest contest is still only 2 hours away. There's nothing in my city, but there are people that live where they might not travel more than 2 hours for any contest they do. So you got all these things that are easier to access, but in how I see it is I see the other end and I'm thinking, are we really getting that much better? Or are we just pulling the curve towards the beginner side? But I guess that's kind of what we want is.
What do you mean pulling the curve towards the beginner side?
So if it's like a normal bell curve, you know, you got a small number of people who are very like just novice, fresh. You got a lot of people intermediate, and then you got the elite. And so with this ease of access and overall participation going up, the promoters of big shows want to say it's being pulled to the elite side. You know, they want to say that now the average is higher, the average athlete in the competition is a higher caliper, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. I argue the other way. I think it's actually gone the other way. It's just like you said, the bubble. It's who you focus on, and it seems like that. So yes, maybe the top like 5 to 10 are getting better, but like I've been to competitions over 5 years, and we're using like the same weights. Yeah, and we're still competing with like 20, 30 guys, and I still look at the times, and I can compare them between the 5 years, and it just goes in like a cycle. We're not really actually like hitting the ceiling. Okay. Like maybe on a couple static lifts, we're kind of hitting the ceiling. But no one's out there like, man, I'm really going to break that yoke walk world record. I'm going to run a 900-pound yoke in sub 8. No one's doing that. They want to care about deadlift and log. So I see it from that perspective, but it is nice to have a lot of participation. Most of my clients are, I would say, past novice, but not intermediate. And seeing the fulfillment they get from strongman does kind of remind me that's like where I came from. Like going out and training strongman was like so cool. And I think in some of my reading and being able to reflect on me as an athlete, it's like, I think that's why I kind of wanted to retire from the 105 classes. It just wasn't fun anymore. And like when I was a kid, it was just so fun. And maybe I was angry and stuff like that, but it wasn't like directed. It was just like frustrated with life in general. Like you don't know your purpose. You don't know what you're doing. And weights are a tangible thing to kind of, you know, get frustration out. But yeah, I see all these clients and they're having such a great time. And it's like, man, they really get it. And it's funny. They're coming to me to ask me like what they need. I'm like, I need a little bit of what you have, because somebody said, it was a former nutritionist of mine. He said, all world champions are broken. And that's so freaking true. We all have like a chip on our shoulder or some like little tick in our head or something just a little fucked up with us, just a little bit. And some of my clients are the most like stable, like well-adjusted people, and they're just having a good time, and they're coming to me for advice. And so I almost feel like I should be paying them, because they're kind of reinstilling some of those values, like what matters. And I try really hard to remind people other things matter. I've had a client that was like going to get a scholarship for something, and he was like trying to tell me he wanted to train strongman more than he wanted to do whatever it was to get the scholarship. I'm like, dude, you probably should focus on school. It's like, I know I didn't do it, but don't listen to me. Like, go get your scholarship. And if you can do strongman and get your scholarship, like, do that. So
it's a tough, and I've had that conversation several times. It's a tough one, right? Because it's like yourself. I mean, I still went through school, but I certainly didn't give a fuck about it. I just knew I kind of needed it as a backup plan. So I'm not one of these no backup plan guys. I think that's stupid as fuck to be able to say that.
Just put it all in one basket and just pray.
There's always room for more. You know what I'm saying? There's always, you put it all in one basket. What are you doing the other fucking 22 hours of the day?
Right. I see.
There's always time to do other shit. So to me, it's just lazy as fuck. It's like,
that was me when I was younger. I was lazy.
Yeah, it is.
I didn't know it till now as an adult. I'm like, holy crap, I was pretty lazy. It's a good thing it worked out. I was pretty lazy.
But you still, I'm going to push back on that a little bit, because you printed out all these articles, you're reading all these articles, you're reading all this stuff about strength and conditioning to be able to become better. So you were selectively lazy. You see what I'm saying? So
I'm gonna tell my mom that.
well, that's what it was, right? Where now it could be, the person's just, on fucking TikTok or socials all the time, true. Right? So they're just burning 3 or 4 hours of their day, where you were taking the 3 or 4 hours of your day trying to learn how to become better at this shit. Fuck math and all this other stuff, but you wanted to learn better at this.
Yeah.
Right. Where now you're a coach and you're making a living from doing this. And, so that paid off what that time was. That was your B plan. Educating yourself, to be a better strongman, compared to somebody, and you didn't have this opportunity, right? But compared to somebody just telling them what to do all the time. Where I'm all for coaching. I'm not like against coaching, but I'm also all for the client asking better questions.
Yes.
So they can learn and pick your brain from all the fucking 14 years that you have of doing this shit, so they can become better, because at some point they still have to auto-regulate everything in their training.
Yep.
You can just help them make better decisions with that. Whereas when that wasn't available to you, right, you're kind of forced. Like, I have to go learn all this shit, because if I don't, I gotta, even if you're in a crew, you're still like, are we doing the shit? That's how
way.
Are we doing it the right way?
Or the way that I should do it at my level? Cause you have people who respond differently. Like, I trained with very few strongmen, but they're higher level, and they would do like one set of deadlifts, and I'm like still kind of good at deadlift. And I was like, this isn't enough volume for me, or this is too high intensity and my form's breaking down. And I had to like just literally go against their advice. And it's funny, because like, you think they're helping you, but sometimes the strongest people actually hurt you, because you try to train like them, and then you go train with people who are trying to get better, and they're at a different level. You're more like them. Like, even like my training partner John, who helped me a ton from my last competition, he pretty much just he basically just said, hey man, I'm not even gonna train, I'll just set things up for you. I'm like, are you sure? I was like, are you sure you want to come out here on the weekend? And he got a pregnant wife. And basically he told me, he's like, you better not get 8th place, man. You're in there to win. I'm like, all right, you gotta win. But, when he trains with me, like, he sees me now after all these years, I can maybe do one top set, or I can maybe do certain things I'm doing. He might need to do more times for skill, or he might not be as durable to handle what I do. So I try to point out those differences, because if he trained like me, unless he's very lucky to have my ability to like adapt quickly and maintain skill and, durability and, those types of things, he might never get better. He might actually get worse. So yeah, it is really interesting looking back now, being more educated, and be like, man, I could have made a lot more progress with different training crews. But at the time, it was also the excitement. So maybe I wouldn't have been as excited about training if it wasn't for going, I trained with some multiply lifters here and there. I trained more power lifters. Like, strongman's just now becoming a sport. Like, people believe there's a skill. But for a while, it was just power lifters that what they did in the off season, right? They did powerlifting, and then they're like, let's put a log press in and carry some farmers, and we'll go do the strongman competition down the road.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's definitely been a lot of learning from, like you said, articles and YouTube. I would go on there and click the most recently updated, and I would just type in strongman and literally just watch any video that was posted strongman. It got to the point I'd watched everything pretty much on YouTube, and it would just be like, I'd have to watch the newest stuff. And actually, one of my clients now, his name's Craig, he posted every workout he's ever done on YouTube. And so I watched him back in like 2009, 2010, and now he works for me. I'm sorry. He's my client. So what, I work for whatever.
Yeah,
I coach him.
I get it.
And, it's just full circle. It's just so amazing. Like, I literally just watched his videos. He would just type his training log, a couple comments, nothing crazy. He wouldn't tell me his methods. And I just watched enough times to like see the patterns and see how training was, and just see how a day would be structured, how warm-up sets would go. And now he's coming to me, and I've learned some other different things, and I know him so well and his personality. And it's like, I don't know, it's just so cool to go from just begging to know stuff to knowing, I guess, enough to coach people. I never feel like I know enough, but that people can get progress off my programs, I'm like, or how I train them. It's it's been a surreal experience over the last, I guess, 14 years of being in the sport.
Let's take a bathroom break so you can get more caffeine, because you said you wanted 1,000 milligrams. So
I think I'm at
200, right?
I think I'm at 600 right now.
So he's at 600 right now. Then we'll light up some cigars. We'll talk more about training. So we'll take a quick break. I want to let you guys know that we just had a limited edition drop on the website last week of new items that sweatshirt, flannel, t-shirts, shorts. Basically, the limited edition items are the items that directly support the Table Talk podcast. So if you go to elitefts.com/limited edition, or actually just the link in the description, you can find the limited edition items that we have now, which there's the one that I like the best is the shit, suck, good, great, which is all emojis. The designs I always like the best, right? They're the ones that don't sell for shit, but they're the ones that I want to wear that I like the best. And there's the cigar one as well. And they're all there on the screen for you guys to be able to see. So if you go to elitefts.com/limited edition, the other thing that directly helps support the podcast that I haven't talked that much about is the Table Talk crew. The Table Talk crew is extra edition episodes that go out once a month. The content of those episodes are AMA related, question related, that come from the Table Talk Discord group, which is also part of being in the crew. When you're in the crew, there's dozens of ebooks that are in there. There's every seminar that we've ever done is put on there. There's courses that are put on there. There's series that have put on there. The original YouTube channel that we had for many years, before we migrated to the newer one, all that old content is on there. There's discussion groups for just general training, fitness, life, nutrition, basically everything that you can think of is on. So just go look at what that is, or better than that, just go to the description, click on join the crew. That helps directly support the podcast, which is how we're able to keep this thing rolling. All right, to get back on track here, what I want to do, because we left or took the break and you were talking about clients. And before we get into coaching and questions all wrapped around that, I want to get into the ultramarathons, the marathons, and where they kind of fit in here, right? Because as I'm looking through and laid out your timeline, I can kind of see maybe like between 2017 and 2021. Was that where some of the marathons and shit came into there?
So I got into running kind of as just like, because the coach at the time I had was a hybrid coach. So I kind of ran for like general conditioning for strongman in 2014. 2015 was most of like getting into running, and I was at a lighter body weight because my primary goal was to be better at open strongman, but I was still a little bit too soft. So naturally the diet brought me down, and before you know it, I'm like middleweight. So I ran in 2015, 2016. I kind of bounced around between 105 classes when I went pro and 105. And then I started combining with like half marathons and a marathon, and triathlon. So I would say the majority of my endurance sports were from pretty much just like 2016 was like probably like 80% of them.
Yeah. Now, when you trained for those, did you still train the strongman heavy during that time, or was this a different phase of training, a different block?
So I still train strongman fairly heavy, but see, 105 heavy is not heavy for like an open, So I was able to basically do the 105 weights while I'm training the endurance stuff because it wasn't too bad. I did do up to like 1,000-pound yoke in training while still running like literally in the same week, but I didn't have to do as heavy like overall events as I would as an open competitor. Probably the most challenging thing I did was I did a full marathon after doing the 105 America's Strongest Man the next day. So it was like I did a strongman competition one day and a marathon the next day, but I had to make weight for that strongman competition. So it was make weight, a day to refuel, compete, a marathon. That was my first marathon. I did not do very well. I think it was like 4:45, not a very good time. My half marathons times were like all under 2 hours. I think my best was like 1:51, 1:52. But yeah, that half marathon was kind of like my go-to distance, I think.
For that marathon that you did after the Strongest Man, did you train for that at all? Or was that just one of those, I'm going to do this after the Strongest Man?
I trained, but I don't think I had done longer than a half at that point, to be honest. Maybe I had not done longer than a half at that point. And then when I attempted an ultra marathon later that year, I only went 62 miles. If you know anything about if anyone knows anything about ultra marathons, you have to check in to make sure, I guess, you're still alive. And I got to the check-in point like right on time, and they'd already packed up. So I guess they had like assumed I was like done. And so I contacted them. They didn't get back to me for like 45 minutes. And by that point I was already kind of tapped out. I said, I'm not going to keep running if I'm not in the race. So I stopped. I'm in my car, with my friends who are helping me, and they don't know anything about running. We're all lifters. And so I did 62, but that one I only trained 16 miles in training for that. So it's kind of just go out there and do it, which is stupid, but it's my personality. Like I feel like if I train as hard as I compete, I would have been broken. So it was almost like you kind of have to, I was training kind of lazy and then just go out there and kind of be in my zone. But obviously running takes a very sustained effort. So it's very different than lifting, where it's like, hit the gas and then pull off. It's like, you got to be 24 hours at least on an ultra.
Forget the ultra, but for training for the marathon and strongman at the same time, what would be, now granted, I know this periodizes over time, but what an average week would look like?
So an average week,
miles.
Oh, miles. Yeah. Average week, I was only running probably 15 miles. I think the most I ever did in a month was only like 70 or 80 miles. I only ran 2 or 3 times a week. Volume is not your friend when you're trying to do multiple sports. Drunk volume is not your friend for anything, but definitely not when you're trying to do multiple sports. You're trying to get the most out of the least of, you're trying to get the minimum effective dose.
Yeah. And how did that work with the marathon? What you see what I'm saying with the marathon, because there's still the wear and tear, right, of the joint impact. So how did you regulate that? So if your knees are fucked up or your ankles are fucked up or your hips are fucked up from the running, or is that far enough away from when your heavier stuff is during the week? How do you lay the week out, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah. So I think what benefits me is I came from strongman. I'm durable. So the impact force of a yoke is higher than running.
Yeah.
So then I didn't have to I didn't have to run hills. My hamstrings are strong. Like an average runner doesn't have strong hamstrings. So running hills and be able to pull in the stride was not a problem. Being able to absorb load, not a problem. Obviously, I'm not just going to go run extra volume because I can. So I didn't really have to do as much speed work for those distances. So it was pretty much like a moderate, maybe an interval run during the week, and then a long aerobic run on the weekend. So it could be like something like Monday would be like more upper body. Tuesday might be a lower body session, more speed based. Wednesday would be the run. Thursday might be like an overhead day for strongman, which involves legs, but like it's mainly upper body. Friday, rest. Saturday might be events, and then Sunday might be the long run. So the long run kind of flushes you out after, so there were times I was training every day of the week. But usually it was like 4 lifts and 2 runs.
Why would you just roll out of bed and say, I want to do a marathon? Like where did that come from?
I mean, when other people are doing it in the training group you're in, it definitely makes it a little more in your head. And I think even before I got in that training group, I always told myself, this is funny, before I even became a pro strongman, I very much was realistic in the sense of like, I'm not going to weigh 350 pounds when I'm 80 years old. If I got the 350 pounds as a strongman, that's possible. I mean, I could do it eventually. I'm not going to live to be 80 doing that. So I knew it was very phasic in that. So I thought, okay, I'm good at strongman. I'll do strongman. Then eventually strongman won't work out. So I'll have to do powerlifting, right? I'll cut the moving. And then after that, then I'll just do bodybuilding. I want the lift is heavy. I can have muscle. By 50, I'll be looking jacked if I just maintain my muscle, standards of society. And then after that, I won't want to maintain, 250 pounds. I'll cut down. I'll be a runner. So I thought that would be like my approach would be like slowly phase it into quote unquote health oriented.
It didn't kind of work out like that though, because you've already done all those things.
No, I kind of already checked them all off. I guess I'm 30 now, and I don't think I have anything left. to do.
Is there any motivation to do an ultra and finish it?
Absolutely.
Okay. With
how did you know?
Well, just guessing. So after the what would you do? 62? How beat up were you from that?
Oh man. My left knee was already an issue then, but then I remember not being able to straighten it for like 3 days. And I just wanted to eat everything in sight. And that was probably really dumb, because it's not really that you need that many calories. It's just that you just like, I don't know, just you want to do something to feel good, eat food. So I gained weight after that. I didn't really run much. I was so beat up. But I mean, I didn't have a good approach. I was dumb. I just kind of did it to do it. I did not plan it out as well as I could have. I mean, I had coaches helping me, but when you're do all these local races and weird challenges that you made up.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm glad I did it. I mean, it's a cool mindset thing. I mean, it carried over the strongman in a lot of ways.
Now I'm going to go out on a limb here and say, had that check-in worked out better, you would have finished the thing, right?
I would have liked it. I think I was catching my stride for sure.
Yeah, that you would have finished it. So what would you do different training for the next one?
Eat more. Oh, well, during the race, I'll talk about.
Well, training for it and strategy of it.
I learned a lot from doing a ski erg ultramarathon and the logistics. So I didn't handle logistics well. But then the volume too, like gradually adding the volume, getting more aerobic capacity.
What is a ski erg ultramarathon?
So that's just basically 24 hours on a ski erg. So you have a ski erg here at the compound, and I pretty much was on that for 24 hours. I did that
on the machine for 24
hours. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. We need to talk about this.
That one's actually a better achievement. Like my very lazy attempt at 62 miles. So from what I've understood from the culture of every sport is elitist at the highest level. So when you talk to an ultramarathoner, to them, an ultra is 24 hours is the cap, not 30. And 124 is like a goal. That's from what I've gathered in the short period of time I was researching and educating myself. So yeah, so in some ways, if I had finished 100, that cap was a 30, they would say like, it's kind of a lazy one. Okay.
So the skier, what possesses you to want to do that?
So I was hurt. So I was hurt in strongman 2019, and then I just needed a challenge, and I had to get stem cells in January of 2020. You're not supposed to move your knee. You're not supposed to move around that joint. They put them in a lot because you'll move them around or whatever. I don't know. I'm not a scientist. I'm not a doctor. So I was like, hey, I got to find a challenge. So I actually went out and I did a marathon on the ski erg, and I said, hey, if I can handle a marathon and not get rhabdo or wreck
How long did that take?
Let me think. Probably it was faster than a normal marathon. So I think it was like 3 or 4 hours.
Mm-hmm.
So I did that at the YMCA that I was going to, and I was like, okay, cool. I was sore, but I did it. Okay, so now I need to have a strategy how I can build up the volume, and I really laid out. That's probably the best. It was during so COVID hit. In the middle of that prep, I rented a ski erg. I didn't even buy it. I couldn't really afford it. Rented it from a CrossFit gym. I gave a bar for collateral, and then I think I paid like right? They think I'm going to steal the ski erg. I'm raising money for wounded warriors. I kind of tried to like message them and say, hey, yeah, collateral. No, I mean, you have to, right? I could have walked away with a ski erg. But, so I give collateral of a barbell, which is my first barbell I ever owned. So that would have been really sad if they messed it up. But, so I had the ski erg, I think, at my house for like 12 weeks, maybe a little longer. I can't remember. The whole, like from the first time I got on the ski erg to the thing, I think was like 16 weeks. So pretty aggressive. But yeah, the job I was working at the time, we did Zoom personal training. I was at a gym. So I basically just had like I had like 4 or 5 Zooms a day for an hour. And there was a break because it's split shift. It's personal training. So I'd pretty much eat breakfast, do the Zooms, do my work, do my weights in the middle of the day, get back on a couple of Zooms, and then do my aerobic work at the end. And then Saturday was just a long freaking day of just ski erging and building up that, almost like a mini, just what I was doing with running. That was their aerobic session. And then I talked to the current world record holder. I talked to guys that were ski erg specialists. I mean, when you want to be good at something, you research it. And I know you do this in everything you do. So it's just like, who's the best at ski erg now? Contact him, FaceTime, contact him, ask about form, ask for hacks. I found out you can get when you ski, you have, and I don't know, I'm from Florida, you have these things attached to the ski. You attach to the skier because I can't even let go of it. If I open my hand, the hand will stay on me. And then I was like, well, how can I get the most time out of it? Well, I can't go to the bathroom. I had a bucket next to me so I could pee in the bucket. So I didn't leave the ski erg at all. So I maximized the time, maximized the efficiency. I made a way to have something flip down so I could drink fluid because I had my hands attached. So I maximized the amount of time I could ski because I knew I wasn't the best athlete. And to get the record, I knew I had to give as much time as I could. So handling logistics, I mean, the lessons I learned from that carried over are exactly what I did in strongman. Exploit everything you can. If you can wear a better pair of shoes to win the truck pull, you're going to buy that pair of shoes. If you can wear your belt a different way, I'm going to wear my belt a different way. If there's a technique that's going to be more efficient, I'm going to do that. And that's what the ski erg was mashing all that. And then you added the training cycle of building up the volume, not getting hurt, doing all my strength work oriented towards being better at ski erg, which meant I didn't go over 135 on RDLs. One, because I'm rehabbing my knee, but two, because why? Mm-hmm. Going over 135, 225, whatever is not going to carry over to my ski erg. It was maintain, keep my body in shape. And then after the ski erg, I was still able to strict press like 90-pound dumbbells for 10 reps because I kept my body healthy. I probably was in the best shape ever. I mean, you're doing a ski erg event. You're not on a lot of supplements.
Yeah.
So that was probably the peak of like me figuring out almost everything at once. And it gave me a lot of confidence, and obviously it was a great feat, and I appreciate all the people that came out to help. I had a great team helping me, and just everything. I mean, even like where you're doing it, did it in the house, turn the AC down, had 3 fans on me, control body heat, everything's controlled. So yeah, that was I mean, if you want to get better at something, you research it, you exploit everything you can, you control the variables that you can, and then obviously you give your best effort. And then that's mind. And then I had that mindset. Like I wore a heart rate monitor in training, but when I did the day of the ski erg, I had to take it off because it was like 150 beats per minute because I was so like adrenaline was hitting me early on, and then it starts malfunctioning. Those things don't always stay on, so I just took it off. But like, if somebody got data, I guarantee you I was in the wrong zone, wrong all this. But it's just like, I don't know. I'm just like weird. I just perform really well at like not where I should. And I have data to kind of back it up. Like my resting heart rate's not that great. I think it just comes down to like managing everything else. So where I can get away with not being the best at something. And strongman's the same way. I get away with not being the strongest by being faster or by being more efficient or being more prepared. And yeah, so yeah.
So what strategy would you change with the ultra then?
Well, logistics for sure. I read a lot about how many calories per hour. Should have had more. I ate a slice of pizza at mile 52 or whatever, and it hit me. I felt like amazing right after. I had been too clean going up to it because I didn't want to upset my stomach. So I did have probably like, I think it was like 300 or 400 calories an hour, but it was just all carbs, minimal protein and fat. And I think for something like that, it's almost like your body craves it. So if I had known that slice of pizza was going to hit me like nitrous, like at mile 50, I'd done that mile 30, so I probably tried to use strategies used more for like a half or a marathon, but this is like a different thing, just like strongman, like they eat junk food. They're not doing bodybuilding strategies might work until you're 350 pounds trying to get down 8,000 calories.
Yeah.
Or like you just did a contest and people that have gotten a lot of adrenaline know like your appetite can be affected by just like tons of adrenaline. Like you just like it's hard to get parasympathetic and eat and digest. You got to eat food that's really dense because you're not going to eat rice and chicken after after day one of a 1 or 2 day show. I'm sorry, after day one of a 2 day show, you're going to have to eat, a burger and fries to be able to get enough calories in.
When you put these challenges in, and I'm going to have to ask about other challenges because I'm sure there's other stupid shit that you've done. I'm assuming you're strategically putting them in the annual plan that you have, where you may not tell people what you want to train for in 12 months. And I get that. I'm kind of the same way, but you kind of know where that sits, and you know where idle time is devil's time. Yeah. Right. So you got to be training for
especially something. As an athlete, man, that idle time is amplified. I mean, you're out of a sport for like 6 months. It feels like 6 years. That ultra was just keeping me busy. And then I don't know when I started working with Justin. I think I knew the next step to rebuilding to be a strongman was getting leaner, basically just starting over.
Yeah. Would you say that all of these things combined together have all worked towards becoming a better strongman?
Now, up until I did the ultra, I did not have necessarily the best plan, but I think at that point, the idea was have a challenge. And then I was already down to like 265 pounds from 330, like we talked about earlier. And then it was like, okay, get leaner. And then you can put muscle on. And if you're going to use supplements or anything else, you're going to put, you want to start lean. So the plan was get lean. And then I talked to Justin Harris, and then I was like, hey, can we bulk? But then I had some other issues come up. Like I broke a toe. The knee was going in the wrong direction. Obviously adding body weight that's why I lost weight in the first place is if you have a lower body injury and you keep weight on, I think that's a really bad decision on your part. Even if it's like you're getting more jacked, like keeping excess fat when you're trying to have a surgery is like asking your body to try to recover. Is just take that weight off. So that's right when I hurt my knee, I was like, I got to get off what I can to take the stress off my knee.
Before the surgery.
Right. Before the surgery and after surgery, right?
How much did you pull off?
So before the surgery, I got down to 300. Okay. So I think I had the weight of like 5 weeks. Mm-hmm. So my goal was to be 300 or less. I think that the morning of surgery, I woke up at 300. Mm-hmm. Like 6 a.m. surgery or whatever. So I get down to 265, fairly lean. I know I could be a little leaner. Talk to him, say, hey, but I do want to go back and eventually be about 300. So we did kind of start a bulk, which I was kind of surprised. I thought he would strip me, like, get me down really light first. But he thought, obviously, if you tell your coach that your goal is to bulk, then he might bulk. So like I said, I got a little too fat. I also wasn't able to train very hard. Then we had to recalibrate. I started losing weight. Never thought I was going to do a bodybuilding show. It just happened. I kept asking, like, hey, how many weeks out am I right now? He's like, probably like 16. I'm like, I don't want to do 4 months of prep. And you've talked about it. Yeah. But then one day I did a check-in and I sent him photos. I think he said something like 10, 11, 12. I don't know. Something like 3 months, maybe. And then he saw another photo of me. I don't know if he saw it from Instagram or maybe like the next check-in, or maybe I sent him an extra one, via text. I don't remember. He's like, actually, you might be able to get away with 8 weeks. I'm like, only 2 months? Yeah. I think I can handle that. But that was kind of I guess in some way it was in the same phase of like strip myself down and build myself back up. And I'm still happy I did it because at the body weight I am now, I'm definitely a better composition and better put together, and maybe even aerobically a little bit better than I was the previous time at 255. And when I won the World's Strongest Man in my weight class in 2017, seeing pictures then and seeing them now, I'm definitely in better shape, and maybe not every lift because of the knee and how I trained, but I was a better athlete as a whole in 2022, which is very difficult for people to do. I don't think people can respect that enough because I am fairly young. I had 10 years of training strongman as far as age. So if I had started at 25, I'd have been 35. It's just that I started young. So it masked the fact that I had beat myself up a lot. So to come back 5 years later and like be better as a whole, I thought that was a great achievement for me. I think it was because I had a little bit of a year plan or 2 year plan, however many years it was, but I did kind of get caught up in the weeds. I didn't have to do a bodybuilding show. Yeah. That probably took me away from strongman too long. Then I came back, I got the 290 with abs, and then I was like, oh shoot, I want to go back to 105. So I had to strip back down again. So if I could redo it all, I would have committed to a coach and said, hey, I'm going to be in this for 3 years. This is the end goal, but I've never done that. I really need to. I was with Justin. I paid a year up front. So that's the highest commitment I've ever done, is paid for nutritionists for a year up front. Looking in the future of my goals and when I assess what I'm going to do, I think that's what I need to do. Is I need to literally buy into like a 2 year plan with someone. It's just having that trust as far as nutrition, training, just the whole, everything, my health, and be able to trust them for 2 years, especially with all, once you get older, your body better than anyone. So I've worked with coaches and they just didn't understand that, like, I don't need to train yoke every week. I'm good at that already. You know what I mean? So, but looking back, I wish I had a better. Well, that plays into,
there's a variable with strength athletes, and I assume this is the same with all disciplines. It's kind of hard to explain because if you go to what was the first pro, when it's 2017. So if you go there, you may have been stronger there than you are now, right? But that's the strength that's displayed, is what's on meet day, show day, competition day. That's the displayed strength. Your absolute strength, or what you actually could do, is what your training yields. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be on competition day.
Right. So you're like wasting it. Like you're not able to express it all on meet day, competition day. Correct.
Yeah. So in 2017, you could have been way better, right? But that gap, there was more gap between what you displayed and what you could have displayed. Where as you become better and more experienced, you can begin to close that gap, which means you can actually start to win, right? Being not as strong, but more experienced, more technically sound, dialing it in the right way, peaking better. In powerlifting, I would explain it as the healthiest person usually is the one that's going to win, not necessarily the strongest person, the one that can display their strength to the fullest ability, right? Where it kind of sucks that you don't learn that till you get older, right? You see what I'm saying? Because if you could learn that when that strength is kind of at that super, super peak point where you have that big gap, imagine if you knew all what you know now, then it would have.
I think the only pushback I have on that is, and this sounds like me saying that you're wrong, but I'm not. Throughout my career, I've done a great job of demonstrating my best lifts in competition. That said, I look back and I let form decay a little bit too much in training, or I did things I didn't have to do, like we talked about. Like I wasn't doing 50 rep tire flips before I won in 2017. Don't get me wrong. I did have coaching, but there were certain maybe singles I could have gone 25 pounds left and saved it. But yeah, I've always been good at expressing it in competition because I do train alone. I don't have a lot of arousal. But as far as like, I call it threading the needle. You're trying to get that right arousal with your ability, right? Being peaked. When you are a little too neurotic, or like when 2017, maybe I had more of a zone where maybe if I misfired, it could have gone somewhere. I still want that particular competition. I won. I dominated because at the time it was the most it was won by, and then someone else won it by more, and then I won it by more again. But I did a really good job, but had it maybe gone a little differently on one or two events, maybe I make too many mistakes. So I think as opposed to powerlifting where it's a number driven, strongman, and I guess powerlifting you make mistakes too, but because you're only doing it one time, you don't get 3 attempts. It's definitely more of a mistake game because you can't retake it. You're done. Yeah. I mean, if you zeroed it. I think now the chances of me making mistakes or being able to correct those mistakes mid event is so much better. So yeah, like you said, my strength might be the highest, but I'm able to express on more days of the year or more times of the year that strength. And then I also know, hey, I don't need to go that heavy in training, or I don't need to do X, Y, or Z in training. So yeah, that's a lot of confidence there. Trying to think what I was saying about 2017 and the injury, the injury portion you were talking about. Yeah, a lot of people see injury as being a really negative thing, but man, it teaches a ton of lessons. And unfortunately, you have to learn them the hard way. But how I've progressed as an athlete and a coach, a lot of it's because I got injured. And I think people come to me because of that, because you don't learn those lessons. And some of it's like people think I know this grand thing about rehab, and I don't. I mean, you've had people on the podcast, like I could never talk about PT because you have the best physical therapist on this podcast. Every time Danny's on here, it's mind blown, right? But people come to me but they know I've been through it. So I do have some ideas of it. And I know so many mistakes. So sometimes you pay for a coach to already have made the mistakes for you. And that mistake could potentially cost me my dream of going to the world's strongest man. And it cost me, now my knees can probably hurt the rest of my life. I'll get a knee replacement, but man, am I a much better coach because of it. And man, am I a better athlete. I can push back on a coach and say, hey, my knee's hurting. We don't need to do that. I pulled squats out a month before my last competition. I got validation from another PT friend of mine. He's like, dude, you don't need the squat. I was like, oh, you're right. I'm doing yoke walk. I'm doing some unilateral stuff. Yeah, my legs get a little smaller. It's not a long-term plan. I need to squat before a year, but for a month or two, I don't need to squat. Just maintain my legs enough so they can handle the stress of a yoke walk. And then then you can focus on putting the size back on. So the learning I got from an injury and going back in my old videos and be like, Andrew, why did you take that lift in training? Why do you hit a 430 axle in training? Why? And I did learn it a little bit before I got hurt, because my last single before I got hurt, I did 457. The American record is 460. I was going to jump the 462 and chip the record in training. I said, no. By principle alone, I was like, I'm not going to break the record in training. It won't matter. And then I go get hurt. So in training, I was capable of doing definitely over the American axle record. And I was capable of doing a 500-pound overhead out of the rack, which is a life goal of mine. And I knew I had them both. And I said, nope, if you demonstrate them in training, you're violating the principle of bringing it the best on competition day. Hindsight, kind of wish I would have done it because I got hurt. But I'm glad I stuck to those principles because that shows the evolution of learning as an athlete. And now, even now in 2023, I know again. So if I ever tried to do that again, maybe I don't even need 457. Maybe I need 440. And then I go to competition and go over 460. Right. So it's constantly learning how little I can do and still be at my best.
I think that's part of the process. I think that's the biggest mind fuck in all strength sports, right? Because as you're younger, you need to learn how to train really, really, really fucking hard, really hard, and not worry about getting hurt.
I have never worried about getting hurt.
Yeah.
And if you can keep that, you will go, oh my God, there are guys that get themselves out of the sport because of that.
Yes. But once you get older, right, it flips on you. You got to worry about not getting hurt, then training really, really fucking hard. Right. It's upside down. Like it's everything that you have to do now is like the fucking opposite of what you had to do before. Now you have to learn how to back off. Where younger, you need to learn how to fucking go full throttle. Yep. And it's a mind fuck when you're trying to navigate that, through the learning how to back off point, because it doesn't make sense. But after you get hurt, it starts to make sense. But to the younger people, they can't misunderstand that.
Right.
Because they still it's like the RPE, the RIR, and all this other kind of stuff. If you don't anchor it, it doesn't mean a goddamn thing. So when you do all those stupid things when you were younger, 50 rep squats and squatting till you puke and doing all this other stupid
I've actually
shit.
never puked, Dave. I actually feel really lame. The closest I ever came to puking in strongman was I consumed a 1,600 calorie protein carb shake. Yeah. Just wait. That, and then I came home and I'd heard vitamin C is good after workout because of free radicals.
Yeah.
So I came home, I had orange juice. I'm staying over the sink. I drink this orange juice. I'm like, if I move, I'm going to vomit. And I hadn't thrown up since I was like a teenager when I got sick. I'm like probably like 19 or 20. So like years, gotten sick. I don't know. It's weird. I have had so few times cramping, so few times throwing up. It's like, I don't want to say I want to be like tested in a lab, but like no, but I'm being serious. Like I think there's some genetic components I have that maybe I don't have the speed and these things, but I have like little weird things like cramping just didn't ever really occur to me. Maybe I have more salt in my diet. I don't know, but you see other athletes get that. There's some great athletes that cramp, or great athletes that always pull their hamstring, and those things. I have pulled my hamstring, but not in running. Yeah. But yeah, it's just some of those things are really weird. I'll touch on that, the RP and RIR thing. In strongman, it's really difficult to judge that. And that's something that's really hard to anchor, is understanding intensity with such weird events. Like how do you judge an RP 8 yoke,
How do you do that with your clients? Because you have to help them.
Yes.
Because that's the anchoring's a big thing, right? Somehow you got to figure this, or they have to understand, and you have to understand where that is for them.
So I put 3 things. I guess for strongman events, so for strongman events, it might vary. So I'll give an example of like a moving event and like a more static event, but a strongman static event. So moving events yoke, and one day I'm gonna have to come up with some formula for this, and I hope no one steals it from the podcast. I'm just gonna say it's trademarked, but it's not.
Sure, trademarked.
But so yoke is always hard, and what I mean by that is if it's a max yoke, so it's like, let's say you have a fixed distance of 30 feet and you do a max, then your load is going to be really high, and your duration may or may not be high, right? Because you could take as long as you want to do that max carry. So the compression force is really high. But if you drop that down, so let's say my max yoke is 1,200, because I've done 1,200 for short distance, but we're doing 800 in the contest. It's speed oriented. Now we're going distance. The shear force at the knees or the back is going to be higher because we're trying to go forward. I'm leaning into it more. So an athlete going fast on 800 has to absorb the force faster. It's a lighter weight, but the force is high, just like, with speed work, and, it's kind of the same principles, right? Getting the same force, but there's different metrics because we have distance, we have time, we have duration, we add in other elements. And for moving events, they're just such a unique animal. So for me, I have to sometimes give description. So I'll say, hey, do a yoke walk, but we're not focusing on speed at all. We want stability. You're going to do 3 sets of 50 or 4 sets of 50 with a weight that 100% that you can carry 100 feet straight. So I know I get high quality work. So I might say their RP is 7 just to throw it in there. Obviously there's not an RIR because there's no reps for yoke. But then maybe on other weeks is timing. So, hey, you can do whatever weight you want for 50 feet as long as you keep under 9 seconds. Sometimes it's 8. I do have to look at like what floor they're using. So I just had an athlete do it, and I gave him 9 seconds. I didn't realize how fast you go on asphalt, because there's a gradient, there's holes. You can't go as fast like a concrete floor, like in a, in an arena or whatever. And so now he can add load. But the second he goes over that time, he's got to stop. So I can control some of the stressors, but there's no way to tell which thing is harder. So for me being a really fast athlete, if you said, hey, Andrew, you can do a 900-pound yoke, but I want you to keep it nice and steady steps, that might be as hard as telling me to do 750 max effort speed, because I can run a 750 yoke under 50 feet, definitely under 8 seconds. I tracked it, and it's usually after about 700 pounds, it's about 1 second per 100 pounds. So 700, 7 seconds, up to 1,000 under 10 seconds. So to me, those are almost the same stress. Yeah, the 1,000, it's on my back a little more, probably is a little more stressful, but I'm trying I'm doing RP 9 speed at 700. And that's where it differs. And then when it comes to like static events like stones, it's hard to describe what a max stone load is, and you don't really want to get to a max because then you're grinding it out, and that's not how you load a stone. You need to have a fluid extension. So I'll usually go RIR for that, or I'll say go until you feel like it's a grind and stop before that. And then I might have to give a rep range, because the stones don't come in every 5 pounds, obviously. So if they're doing a 300-pound stone, I might say, hey, do 3 to 6 reps, stop 2 reps in reserve. Or when you feel like the extension starts to lag, where you're kind of like muscling through the top end, stop. And then they'll do drop down work. And again, I have to give ranges, drop 10 to 15% and match that number of reps. So they do 300 at the top set for 3. Then they might have to drop, maybe their next stone is only 260. Okay, so it's more than 10%, but it's not quite 15. Now they're doing 260 for 3 more sets of 3 or 2 more sets of 3. And then I can even have a volume cap in there. So I can say, hey, you're going to do 15 total loads in the workout. So if your top set ends up being 6, don't do 3 back down sets of 6. That's 24 reps. Okay, so there's a lot more ranges in strongman. And I think having things like a volume cap, or like stopping people at a speed, or using a timer, those things come in the strongman a lot more. And that's where kind of elements of like other sports come in. Cause like, where do we use a stopwatch? All track and field. So strongman is like, I would have to live to be 100 to learn every sport that goes into strongman, but CrossFit influences it.
Yes.
Track and field influences it. Team sports influences it. And obviously powerlifting, weightlifting, and the more, and bodybuilding, the more, traditional strength sports, if we count bodybuilding as a strength sport.
How would you then go about, because you kind of touched on it a little bit with the stone, but go about training the more rep type events? Say it's a axle deadlift for reps, or what's the other examples that would be? Circus dumbbell sometimes.
Circus dumbbell, I think probably more applicable, just because, I mean, deadlift is going to be like, you have to know what the contest weight's going to be. Is their max? Is it sub-maximal? So, when I get these clients that hop in their first open class show, they've done one novice show, they go to open. Usually they're like just trying to get a rep. But let's say circus dumbbell is a high skill event. And I've borrowed this from my coach, Mike Westerling. Definitely, if you want someone on the podcast, he should come on here. He's great. But he likes alternating like EMOMs and like heavier weeks. I also like an alternating structure, though I do think that some people need more skill. So 4-week blocks further away from competition, because circus dumbbell is very stressful. I mean, you're essentially doing so my best circus dumbbell is 270. And at the time I could overhead press like 400 something on an axle. So, it's definitely over half. It's closer to like 60 or 70%. So it's overload. It's more than that shoulder would normally hold, and I'm stabilizing it. But yeah, as I get closer to contest, I might alternate EMOMs with a lighter weight, maybe having like a skill aspect, like a pause in the dip or a pause in the rack position. And then on the heavier weeks, I'll work up to like a top set. And again, that's the same descriptors I would use, is like, you can't really grind out a circus dumbbell rep. Like some guys can, but a good presser, it nails it. And it's, it's crisp. But yeah, so how would I train
those that don't know, what is an EMOMs?
So EMOM is it depends on how many reps you'd want to pick, but every minute on the minute. So you set a timer. And so when the timer goes off every minute, you're going to do 1, 2, 3. Mm-hmm. Usually I don't go past 3 reps. But let's say it's a rep event for an athlete, and they're looking at 4 to 6 reps to hit. What I found is really beneficial is hit an EMOM where you're doing about double the reps over the EMOM. So if your goal is 6, you should probably be able to do an EMOM. You can hit 12 total reps. And because you're doing 6, you probably want to get used to going between 2 or 3 reps. So you might do an EMOM of 2 reps every minute on the minute for 6 minutes, and then progress that into 4 minutes of 3. So if you're able to do 12 reps, high quality reps over 4 minutes, all you're doing when you go to contest is reining that into a smaller time frame. And it builds a lot of confidence because now you're handling the contest weight for double the volume and you're getting potentially double the quality reps. Now, obviously, when they get closer to contest, I'll have them do a rep set, or I might have rep sets built in throughout 4 weeks out, 8 weeks out, but usually it's sub-maximal. Because I feel like training a contest weight for rep events can kind of hurt people. Because let's say you do only 2 reps. Let's say the weight's 160. You do 2 reps at 160, but like, the contest weight, it's 160, but then you go there and you find out you're peaked really well, or you're in good condition, or maybe the promoter lightened it to 140 because just happened, these things happen all the time with strongman. You're only used to doing 2. So I'd rather someone be used to having like a range they're doing. So I might have some weeks are heavier, so they do the low end of their goal, and other weeks that are higher, so they do the high end. Because strongman is so much a range that until you really know, just looking at the events, what you're going to need to win. Like my last competition, I knew guaranteed 8 reps will win that event. Guaranteed. I said 6 to 8. 6 won it. I won it. But like if the best pressure's there, 8 would probably be the cap. So I know I'm training for that range. So yeah, I could talk forever about how they train for the range, different strategies, and it comes in every athlete. I run some of these things where they're doing a skill-based exercise or a mobility-based exercise on, say, the Monday of the week, and then doing more of a competition, higher intensity on, say, a Thursday. But an older athlete, I mentioned one, Craig, he's been in the game for like 15 years. It worked one cycle, it didn't work this time. We had to go the alternating method next time. And me being a coach that listens to the athletes, and I understand things are always changing, and the interactions between different events change because they're not the same like powerlifting. You're not doing the same 3 lifts. The conditions change. So I say, okay, fine. We'll go to we'll alternate EMOM and heavy, and now we'll find an accessory that will drive up your circus dumbbell press or maintain it. Because sometimes maintaining is all you need. Maintain an event you're good at, improve something else. Yeah.
How far out do you know what the events are going to be?
It depends. I would say a good promoter usually puts it out 12 to 16 weeks. Pro systems, yes, now when strongman was more entertainment, there was you kind of liked it being random and like not knowing. But now that we want world records and we want good performance on TV, I feel like it really benefits promoters to get information out sooner.
So it's definitely enough to be able to block train this into that.
Yeah. And I think a good strongman coach is probably keeping general capabilities in the program already. So like I'm looking for unilateral, I'm looking for carrying in the off season. It might not be a yoke, it might be a sandbag. I'm looking for maintain extension patterns. And it's also based on how long the athlete can maintain the skill. So I can maintain the skill. Me personally, I can maintain like stone loading really well. I've done a lot of it. I'm very experienced. Someone who hasn't done a lot of strongman, they might need to do stone loading / sandbag loading all year round to improve that skill instead of doing another deadlift variation or a good morning. But then other athletes might alternate. So I have athletes that alternate stone loading with good mornings. I talked about with the SSB bar, because now you can put a number to it. You can change the weight on SSB to 5 pounds. You can't on a stone. You might only own 3 stones. I used the same stone for the majority of my career, 300 pounds. That stone weight at 105 and when I was an amateur was light. I could throw it and I could practice different techniques, and it was the same diameter because they change in size as the ones in competition. So I trained with the one that was most applicable to carry over. In heavyweight, I probably need to try the heavier one. So usually it's like 350 to 400. But I understand that some events don't need to be trained maximal, and that one is really a speed and being fluid through the extension pattern. A deadlift, you probably can't get away with just doing speed work on deadlift. That I don't think that. I think powerlifting now understands that doesn't work as well. And I think even you've talked about from Westside, like deadlifting wasn't like squat drove the total, or at least for all the multiply. And now we're seeing like, oh no, guys are training deadlift twice a week because they can recover from deadlift faster than they can squat, or they can recover faster because they're not doing 1,000-pound squats in gear. They're doing 600, 700, 800. So yeah, it's just the evolution of the sport is, even myself as a coach, I can't even keep up with it.
How do you, are you seeing that? Because you're working with athletes that are intermediate, right? So you're not getting a lot of the beginners that are coming into it. Are the intermediates that are coming to you at a higher level than what they were? Because you've been doing this for a decade, right? So than they were 5 years ago.
So I haven't been doing online coaching full time. It's only been the past 2-ish years, but it's been full time. It was kind of a side. I mean, I had a couple athletes online, periodically, and I trained at, I had the personal training job, YMCA, small gyms and stuff like that. So a lot of general pop, but I would say no. I don't think, because I do have a lot of novice athletes, and I think that's because it's cool to work with a pro strongman. And I think once they realize that I'm not a jerk. Like, I was trying to think of examples of this before I got on the podcast, because there's something else I discussed with other coaches. In general pop, I had someone come to me who was in his 40s, had never bench pressed. I said, no, I'm sorry. He never lifted weights. I said, all right, whatever. You never lifted weights like with a routine. I figured at some point in the basement, he had never done a bench press in his life. We started with 10-pound dumbbells, a 40-year-old man, and I took him to be on the bench, and he was very skinny, probably weighed 140 pounds, and he benched over his body with a barbell like a year later. And I think that taught me, like, there are people coming into these sports that I can't assume know the basics. Yeah. So once I see that, like, they're like, hey, I don't know what the heck I'm doing. Okay, let's pull back and let's focus on the basics. With the intermediates, a lot of them do already know, like, obviously squat, bench, deadlift. And then it's teaching more. I want more of the feedback from their event sessions. So I want to see your stone load. Just because you hit 250 for 3 reps, I want to see if you're finishing the extension. Are you in up on your toes? Are you bringing your leg in so you're taller in the lap? I'm so passionate about this. There's probably not enough time in the day to pick every little piece apart of an athlete. So it's on them to send the videos. But if an athlete that I'm working with sends a video from the main list and maybe one accessory for every session in a week, and I film a video of feedback, that person can get exponentially better than just seeing an Excel spreadsheet of numbers. And I think all those little nuanced things are so important, because, like you said, maybe they're coming to me with a little bit more knowledge of the barbell, but I don't think the strongman knowledge is as high, because now they can go to a gym and pay $40 a month and have access to the equipment. Before, you had to build it. So by the time you're building it, you're invested. You've watched every YouTube video and read every article. Some of these people are coming in, they're like, hey, I saw strongman on TV. My gym down the street's $40 a month. I'm going to go there. There's farmer's handles. And then I see them load it. I'm like, no, we got to start over. We got to do that differently. So
yeah, that's what just came to my mind when you were saying that, is because the access is easier. Are you having people come into you that just their technique's horrid? Like, so they know how to do the yoke because they've been doing the yoke, but it's a complete mess.
Yeah, some of the events are a little off. Yoke walk's funny because I say, how do you forget how to walk? So yoke walk is, so I just had a female client start with me, and she came from CrossFit, so they'd done a little bit of yoke, and I was impressed. She understood the idea of moving your hips forward in the yoke, but just small changes, like wear your belt because it's going to help you, and move your hands down a little bit. And here's a cue for the weight you're using in competition. So for her, the weight was actually relatively light. So I didn't have to change, but she was already able to do the weight. So now we're working at little things. If an athlete came to me and they can't do the weight, then obviously I got to change some things and make sure their bracing pattern's better. And, I got to optimize the pick and stuff like that. But she was already like, she didn't look like she was like out of water, so to speak, on the movement. It was fluid. She was walking fine. The form things are probably very nuanced things. Like most people understand, like on the stone, as long as you're not bicep curling over the bar, you're probably close. But man, can we optimize it a lot more, or for you to be more efficient or use your strengths. So I don't squat very much in the stone load. It's a combination of a squat and a hinge. But depending on your build, you might be more hinge pattern load or more squat load. And so we're going to determine those. And then that obviously affects the accessories, or vice versa. If you're really strong at front squat, maybe you front squat more of the stone versus extension. So it's very nuanced, but I'm very impressed with all my clients because I do believe, like you said, in self-coaching. And I think sometimes I type things and I delete it because I want them to figure it out. And I think over-coaching is something I've learned not to do. So I'll give them a little bit and I'll let them make a mistake. And then I want to see if they can correct it on their own. And when you're working with clients that are like you, I'm very type A, I'm probably on the spectrum or something. The last thing I need myself is a coach to be OCD. My coach, Mike, literally tells me very minimal information now. And sometimes he just tells me, Andrew, you know how to do this. And I tell some of my clients like, hey, do you remember when you did that stone load like 4 months ago? just do it like that. And now they figure it out. And it seems like it's a lazy coaching mentality, but like too many people overcoach and they paralyze their athlete. And I want my athlete to jump on the stone and not even think about it and be it's automatic. So
well, it provides accountability too.
Right.
Where I don't want to say it's a tricky one, but it's a one that I think is important to the training process, because even with the stupid shit that I do, there's things that I want to accomplish, that I want to accomplish before the end of the year. And this could be business or anything. And those things I'm going to strive to do. And then when the due date arrives, I may move the due date because I'm not competing in a said date, right? It still wants to be accomplished by the end of the year. That due date arrives, I still have to do the thing, or to try to do the thing, even if I know it's not going to go the way that I want it to go. I don't want it to go that way, but failing it's going to piss me the fuck off. Like it's in business, I can relate it to, looking at my profit and loss statement at the end of every month. It's either where I want it to be or it's not, right? But I have to fucking look at it,
right,
to be able to know. And if it's not where I want it to be, well, then I have to make the corrections on whatever needs to be, more income or lower the expenses or what it's going to be. If I don't have that accountability to be able to look and have that check, to be able to know what it is, then you're just running blind, right? Where a lot of people, I think, are training blind because they're not putting these goals or having these metrics that they have to be responsible for themselves out there. Like by this, by end of first quarter or whatever it is, I have to have X, Y, and Z, right? Well, when you start to get there and you start to see X, Y, and Z aren't going to happen, well, sometimes they'll just completely do something different instead of just fucking failing the X, Y, and Z and learning what they should have learned from that fail. In other words, they go out of their way to avoid failure.
Right.
Right. And when they do that, they never get better. Right. Because that's kind of part of the process, where what you're talking about with, you're giving them that opportunity, right, to be able to fuck it up and figure it out. Right. Now, if they can't figure it out.
Well, I just want, because my clients are listening to this, because I feel like I have the best clients in the world. I don't make you guys fail.
I know that. I get that.
They're small. Like, I'm not talking like I want you to mess yourself up, but like if I give you one cue on a stone load and that cue doesn't fix the other problem I see, I wait till that first problem's fixed.
Yes.
You can't give more than so many cues. And I want people to, it's just like the same thing with like nowadays people are more on this resilience thing, right? They don't believe the body's very fragile. And I think that's amazing. I think it's the same thing with coaching, is like, it's okay to make mistakes and then, over time change it. You don't have to have perfect form. And that's what the beauty of strongman is. Like, you're learning to, like, I don't want to say dance with the implement because I don't know how to dance, but like you're dancing with these implements. You're trying to work around them and you try to like, move them with your body. It's a very like choreographed thing. And you think that happens in one day, in a week, in a month. It's a gradual progression. So I'm not going to be like, hey, what you need to do is do 10 things as you're doing this. No, start with one. That's your focus. Okay, you got that down? Move to the next thing. Break in the manageable parts. And then over time, you'll be like, wow, I went from looking like that to this in the training cycle.
Yeah, it's the process.
And the business side relates to me more too, because so I work with Paul O'Need, and he basically said the same thing. Is like, I was running my coaching. I just started doing the coaching full time. It kind of, it didn't work out in the gym scene, and I was like, I got to work for myself. And I tried my best. When you're faced with that problem of going into the business on your own, you kind of just you just jump. You just need to do it. You need to make the website. It's crappy, whatever. Mm-hmm. And I'm still learning so much. It's overwhelming. But like, you have to look at it. You have to say, hey, you have to look at the finances. You have to look at the, the feedback from your clients. You have to look at how long you're taking to do certain tasks and manage them. So yeah, very much like you said, taking the athlete side of how I did it and trying to do that same thing logistically and analyzing it on the business side is, I guess, kind of my new, I don't want to say it's a sport because I'm not as passionate about it, but yeah, it's absolutely a game. It's a game of learning the reels and the feedback on Instagram. It's a game of learning how best to provide your service as a coach.
Yes. And it's the same thing right? It's the same thing as everything you're doing with strong. There's so many variables. It's overwhelming. As you've kind of already said with strongman, it would take you days just to go through one of the implements.
This is part 1 of 10.
Yeah, exactly. There's so many things, but after a while you start to figure out what the main things are.
Yes.
And then you put most of the focus on those main things, and you expect that they're going to go wrong because everything goes wrong, right? Everything is a constant process of correcting what's supposed to be right. Right. So that's any of the implements or the carries, anything like that. Like you have the carry, but most of the carry is just trying to reinforce what's right. Right. And if it starts to, you feel it's starting to fuck, you go where it's supposed to go. Like the airplane's always self-correcting. I talked about the reels on Instagram, and one of the problems is people want new things, and it's really not new, right? It's the simple stuff being repeated and having intent. So like, I mentioned my coach, Mike, and like his program is very simple and he's told me numerous times, I've boiled it down to what matters. And essentially what it is, he's 95% of all the stuff that matters. The other 5-10%, your little warm-ups, your activation drills, your accessories, your rehab, is exactly that. It's the 5-10%. So unless you're literally the best in the world, and he coaches world strongest, he coached Brian Shaw at one point. Unless you're at that point, there's really not too much searching you should be doing, because you're going to go out and search for the 10% and sacrifice the 90. And I made that mistake. I've switched coaches, and it is trying to find that secret. And we know there's not a secret, but when you're an athlete at a high level, you're always desiring more. But yeah, like I'll constantly refer clients. Like if they're like unsure of a coach, I'm not afraid to refer to someone else. Go to Mike. He's been doing this longer than me, and he's boiled it down to the basics. Now, will it always be optimal, whatever optimal is? Maybe there's a couple things he could have thrown and made it better. And then also, maybe because he didn't throw those in, you were healthier longer. And he games on that a lot. And I think that's why he's one of, if not the best coach in strongman, is because he's boiled it down to the basics. And I'm still working at doing that, because I still get caught up in the shiny things and the new warm-up drills and the rehab stuff. But I think that's my personality is different. I'm seeking that 1%. So I do rein that in for my clients. But for me personally, as an athlete, I do have to digest other coaches' content, because there might be something I'm missing, or I feel that I'm missing. So, well, I also think that with you expanding the business and the coaching that you're doing, being attracted to the shiny things is a good thing, because your clients will ask you about those.
Right.
Right. So if you're completely ignorant to that, then you're not keeping up with your field, and you're not going to be able to give them the best answer. Granted, most shiny things never work. Right. They never, throughout history, most never work, but maybe one does. Maybe one can be a game changer for whatever that person is, but you don't know. You need to at least know enough to be able to say, oh, okay, you've been around a while. Okay, I've seen this. This is not the first time this has come through.
And it goes in that, it waves around.
Yeah, I've seen this come through 3 times before. But either way, you can acknowledge that that's what it is, and then reinforce. Let's get back to what you really need to work on.
Right.
Right. Because most of the time that shiny thing's not what they need to work on. It's the basic stuff, right? I would say with most top level strength athletes, no matter what you do throughout your training, you know the answer, but you may not be able to find it in yourself.
Oh yeah.
And it needs a conversation with somebody else to be able to let you talk it through,
or turn the noise off. There's too much noise. Like when you have a coach, they're turning the knobs of the other things down enough for you to hear the thing you need to listen to. And
how many times you've been talking to somebody about training, one of your clients about training, then all of a sudden you realize, that's what I should be doing.
When I have a client that hits, someone just hit like a 40 pound log PR, been training. I had a consultation with them first, and then he became a client of mine. And I said, man, I should run this program. That's what I said. I said, I should run this program. Yeah. And he said, no, that's what happens. Like you think of all these things and then take someone else to kind of, and so it's cool because even he knows that he's smart enough to do a program. But whatever I'm doing for him, turning down the other noises, giving him exact things to focus on, is helping him. And then ironically, I'm in his same spot because I feel the same way as an athlete still. When it comes to shiny things, on the drive here, I was re-listening to your podcast about Westside about Attendo units, because that's kind of gone in and out of velocity-based training. And it's more of a track and field thing. And you were talking about the form going down, and I was just trying to think like, I bought one of those. So I got to justify why I have it now, because otherwise I'm an idiot. it's not good for me on deadlift all the time because my form will change, and deadlift can be slow and you still get it. But when you look at like track and field, they use it for things that are like not competition oriented, right? Like they're a thrower, and yeah, their clean form can deteriorate a little bit, but their speed is high. That's going to transfer over to throwing. So when I look at strongman, it's like I do incline bench, and for circus dumbbell, I personally felt that the speed of my incline bench against bands is kind of applicable to the circus dumbbell, and I need to look like I'm throwing it. So my form breaks down a little differently, or maybe it's not the best bench technique, but I'm not using maximal weights, so I'm probably not going to tear things, and also I'm pretty mobile. But like, if I was trying to bench the most, it would not be the intelligent thing to do. So those shiny things could have their place a little bit more in strongman because we're such a weird sport. But like for powerlifting, there's a reason why you guys threw out the back door. It's just like,
but it could have its. Let's put it may have had its place had we never seen the numbers.
Yes, if it was behind a curtain.
Say Lily saw the numbers, right, and then he's able. And
he wrote it down, and he never told you about it.
Yeah, then he's able to say after 6 sets, "Hey, look, shut it down."
Right.
Force is too low.
But a good coach sees that intuitively.
Yes.
Like a tennis, there's some book about, I don't watch that sport. But there's a coach that was able to tell something about the speed, or I don't know what the metric was, but they had like some type of computer, and he was able to like pick off the serve or something, because when you've been doing it so long, like just like Justin Harris, you could run those guys through a bod pod or a DEXA scan. I guarantee you he's going to be pretty close. He's going to know because he's seen so many check-in photos. To this point, he can be, oh yeah, done. And so you're verifying your intuition. So maybe for a newer athlete, better, but the newer athlete also can't focus on numbers. They got to focus on other things. So it's one of those things where it's a shiny thing that has its place, and it's in the toolbox, but it might not be the hammer. It's a specialty tool.
Yeah. And there's as things evolve, there is more and more technology that is actually fucking awesome to be able to.
Absolutely. I'm not knocking
to implement that. It's cool to implement. But for most, it still is going to come down to the application of the basic shit.
Right.
And sometimes that basic stuff gets sacrificed, for the exercise of the quarter. I don't want to say day, because usually one exercise will go on Instagram and last for a couple months.
And what's the one now? Zerchers
is it now? I haven't paid attention.
It's not bad. It's just, we actually had a sumo deadlift in the last show, and I actually love sumo deadlift. I'm probably going to get banned from strongman now, but
are you allowed to do that?
In this show, as part of the medley, they wanted to kind of like be, I don't want to say I don't know. They wanted to go against the norm. They want to be different. It was in a medley. It was really a technicality. Everybody got the sumo deadlift. It would have been better if it was heavy enough to where, okay, I thought somebody's adductor was going to pull. When you take a bunch of strongmen that don't get in that, right?
Yeah,
isn't that the first thing you're thinking? We were on a slope parking lot, minimal warm up. 10 minutes was the last event. We're not primed like a powerlifter in the warm up room. Even in the worst warm-up room, I'm like, man, someone's adductor is going to go. I'm doing Cossack squats. I'm doing Copenhagen's. I'm conditioning my adductors, and everybody, no one gets hurt. I was like blown away. But no, I am very open-minded to every tool. Like even, I know like ice baths, they rotate in and out, and people are like, oh, it's not good for hypertrophy, but maybe it's good for nervous system. Maybe it's parasympathetic, like just, having these cigars. Like you can't throw any, like to me, I don't throw any tool, and it's just how you apply them. And I think some coaches are better than others at applying them. And again, when you look at home improvement projects, like what are the tools you go to? Like you have a hammer, you have a pair of pliers and some duct tape, like that fixes a lot of stuff. Oh, yeah. Those are the core things. You don't get like a specialty tool until you're doing that one project and you get it. And then you put it back in the toolbox. It's there for years.
Never use it again.
Or never use it again if it's one thing. Or then you just call the plumber because you realize you spent too much money on that. And you're like, I'm never dealing with that crap again.
Yeah, exactly. I'm going to take another piss real quick. Then I want to get into some of these quotes that you have in this stuff that you sent me.
Oh, yeah.
So those are good ones. So another break. I want to let you guys know that we just had a limited edition drop on the website last week of new items that sweatshirt, flannel, t-shirts, shorts. Basically, the limited edition items are the items that directly support the Table Talk podcast. So if you go to elitefts.com/limited edition, or actually just the link in the description, you can find the limited edition items that we have now, which There's the one that I like the best is the shit, suck, good, great, which is all emojis. The designs I always like the best, right? They're the ones that don't sell for shit, but they're the ones that I want to wear that I like the best. And there's the cigar one as well. And they're all there on the screen for you guys to be able to see. So if you go to elitefts.com/limited edition, the other thing that directly helps support the podcast that I haven't talked that much about is the Table Talk crew. The Table Talk crew is extra edition episodes that go out once a month. The content of those episodes are AMA related, question related, that come from the Table Talk Discord group, which is also part of being in the crew. When you're in the crew, there's dozens of ebooks that are in there. There's every seminar that we've ever done is put on there. There's courses that are put on there. There's series that have put on there. The original YouTube channel that we had for many years, before we migrated to the newer one, all that old content is on there. There's discussion groups for just general training, fitness, life, nutrition, basically everything that you can think of is on. So just go look at what that is, or better than that, just go to the description, click on join the crew. That helps directly support the podcast, which is how we're able to keep this thing rolling. Getting back into this, I have these quotes I want to get into, but something hit me while I was in the bathroom. That when you were talking about training people in person, you were doing so at the Y. Was that the same Y that threw you out?
So they're like what's the word? That was a branch of, so that branch actually went out a bit. Well, the YMCA isn't doing too good. That kind of is fading, especially now that everybody trains for real. It's a wellness facility or whatever they call it. But no, it was the same First Coast YMCA. So it was kind of funny. I worked there. I didn't work there very long. I think I worked there for only a year out of college. Then the most recent time I trained General Pop was where I live in Jacksonville, and it was a studio gym. I kind of did small groups, but what I did was I programmed for them in like 4-week blocks. Basically gave them a piece of paper. This is what you're supposed to do. Not everybody listened to me, and I'm just going to compliment some of my I haven't talked to these clients in a long time, but I'll shout out one client because maybe she'll listen to the podcast. Her name was Amber, and I really appreciate her because she listened to me and followed the plan. And she started with doing 1 or 2 pull-ups, and I progressed through doing. When I say I mean I just told her what to do, and she did all the work. But did 12 chin-ups, which is a little easier, and then 12 pull-ups later on. A female, General Pop. Doesn't play a sport, doing it for wellness. And that felt really good because I think female clients listen more. Ego is not as high.
I saw the same
and
thing.
I love breaking down that barrier because I see the weight room is for everyone, right? And and being a teenager that wasn't able to, being kicked out and being treated differently. If you're a female and you're intimidated by weights and you have to go to that, this gym was more sheltered, right? There's only going to be 12 people in the room at a time. Yeah. If you look like an idiot, only 11 other people know, and I'm not going to judge you. So at most 11 people are judging you. Not like in a big gym where everybody's looking at you. You look like an idiot. But yeah, it was really nice training General Pop. I learned a lot of lessons, a lot of cues. I learned how to make the program more applicable to the holistic approach. I still do that. Access to strongman equipment is not for everyone. Not everybody has the same stuff. Not everybody has the same lifestyle. If you got kids, like I don't have kids, but like I grew up in a family with a bunch of brothers. Like I know, like if my parents did strongman, they wouldn't been able to do it like 4 days a week, go to a strongman gym. So when I look at coaching, I kind of look at it as a holistic approach, and I say, okay, what's your access like? How much do you want to dedicate to it? How long do the workouts have to be? And I try to build it to them. And if they give me feedback, sometimes what they want is not optimal. They want to do some arm work. Okay, I'll give you a little bit. I'll pick the safest thing to do with strongman because, bicep stress is high, but I'm not going to be ignorant to the other needs of the person. I think creating that relationship where they can comfortably come to you and give feedback without feeling like they're being judged is really good. But yeah, General Pop taught me a lot of lessons in working with people. I didn't get to work with high level athletes, but then I also got to apply principles that I took from being a high level athlete to general pop. So it worked both ways. And I think a lot of online coaches would say that general pop did help them a lot for online. Online has a lot of other challenges. Obviously, you're not in person. You can't, give feedback as quick. So you have a delayed response. But if you are able to do both, and eventually I might cut it at some point, if I had access to a gym where I could do it easily, obviously you update stuff online in the convenience of your own home. I would train more clients in person because there's a lot of gratification almost instantly when you see someone do a crappy rep, give them a cue, come back and they get it. And when you take someone, I have novice athletes and they send me a picture or they tell me something, or that, like, I just had somebody tell me, they brought down their blood pressure and their wife lost 9 pounds, and he's just doing nutrition with me. And I'm like, wow, that's changing their life. And I'm not saying he's general pop, like he competes, but his wife doesn't compete. So to have these principles as a high level athlete, or at least what I think I'm a high level athlete, and apply them to other people and get a benefit in their life is great. And I think a lot of times it's almost more rewarding, because if you I've gotten to work with some people at the World Strongest Man level, either consulting them or be able to work with them, and they're like me. They're never going to be satisfied. But that general population person just trying to be healthy is like, holy crap, I can do 8 pull-ups. I can do 2 pull-ups. Mm-hmm. And when you're a female, being able to do a pull-up is like badass. Like, dudes in the gym were intimidated. Oh, I just weigh more. Yeah. And I couldn't say it there, but I can say on this podcast, yeah, you're intimidated, bro. She's doing pull-ups and she has less muscle mass than you, and you just want to bench. So yeah, I love that experience. And even though it would have been nice to get into just train athletes right away, I wouldn't change that course of how I was a coach. That it did mold me in
yeah, my look on that's going to be the same, but it's biased because I did it for 8 years or whatever it was. So it's obviously a biased view that's on that, because you're working with people who completely different backgrounds, completely different communication skills, and very, 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 very low skill level, and, fitness levels are horrid, so you can make bigger, more profound differences, right? In their lives per se, but it's still a mind thing, because you want to instill these habits in them that they're going to maintain, right? Forever, and that's the sometimes where I don't know, looking back, how many of the clients did I have back then that are still training now? Because when it was Gen Pop, a lot of the times they become dependent. They won't work out unless the trainer, was there. So then when I left that world, for a different world, it's trying to get them all to move, to another trainer, right? Just out of fear for them that they'll just quit training. Right. And that could have been a piece I just didn't figure out, even after doing it a decade, how to.
Well, you're almost trying to coach yourself out of the job. Yeah. You're trying to give them the resources, and this industry sometimes, I don't know what the word is, where they're trying to keep people, attention, but also just keep them trapped in needing coaching. And I don't ever want that. I rather retention is obviously a metric we all want to track, but I don't want to have 100% retention, because that means that no one was able to go on and do it on their own ever. Yes. And if someone comes to me and say, Andrew, I want to try something different, and I see this all the time. I actually have people come back to me after taking a period of training by themselves, just because they want to explore. And that's fine. And imagine if I'm that coach that, whoa, if you come back, I'm not going to accept you. No, I will give you a little bit of priority because I know you, so I don't have to have that learning curve. Yeah. But you give me 4 weeks heads up. If I have an opening, you're the first one. Because I'd rather work with you because you are able to understand that I offer you something different. And you're also able to understand that I'll let you go on your own. And I'm not intimidated by another coach, another trainer. I advertise for other coaches just as much. I already mentioned mine on this podcast. I think that's I have insecurities, but that's not an insecurity I have, because I'm not the best at everything. And so if you can find something better, do it, because you're the customer, and that's what you're searching for. And I'm sure in business you're the same way. If you don't provide the best product and someone else does, you're either not going to sell that product, or you're going to find a way to make your product better. And then when it's better and you're competing, that person's going to come back because now you're the best.
Yeah.
So,
it's capitalism. That's how it's supposed to work, right?
yeah, exactly.
I mean, it is. I mean, if you have a shit product, then you need to raise the game of what that is, right, or the service or whatever it is. Product, price, service. There's different variables you can play from there. The one quote, I'm going to go with the one on your shirt because there's 3 of them, but the one on your shirt, the first one is the never, never quit. So what's the story with that?
So it sounds like it's a double negative, and I guess it is, but it's supposed to have a quote. It doesn't look good with a quote on a shirt. So my parents got my brother Dan and I these 2 posters. I don't even think he remembers his, because his was actually this poster. It was never, never quit. It's a background on my phone. It's a football player. His hands are all taped up. It's got the blood and the dirt. He's holding his helmet. It just says never, never quit. The other poster was actually the one I got, and it was, I need to buy this one as well. I've already purchased this original poster again. But the other one was like 10 ways to try harder or something. And it was like, try, and then again, and then try again a different way. And it just was like repetitive and try again, but continually finding a different way to do it until you solve the problem. Mm-hmm. So as a kid, you don't want to get the poster, just words. So that's one I got. And my brother got the cool poster, the football player. But, I don't know why it was so, I don't know why it stuck with me so much, but I had it in the home gym with my parents for a while. I think what happened is it fell off wherever it was hanging. It eventually got thrown away. It had holes in it from like weights dropping against it or being bumped into or whatever. But yeah, it's just I guess it was instilled in me to like keep trying to solve the problem. And then when I played football, like I don't want people to think I was a good football player. I wasn't. But like when you suck at something, you have to find some way to get better. And that for me was hustling back to the line or the huddle. You get a lot in sports and I guess in life too when you just hustle. And I'm not mean like hustle like the hustle people use in business. Yeah. But I mean like just hustling and like being faster than people, being there first, getting up faster and showing intent. Like coaches look at that. Like my clients that check in faster, the ones that give me more feedback, they get a bias from me. The ones that are doing all the small things or sending me videos where they train in the rain. Like, I know you're not the best athlete, but you're doing the harder stuff and you're not quitting just because it's raining outside or because you're this broke or that broke. And that as a coach is like, wow. And as an athlete, I don't want to be known as a person that quit. So that's why I finish competitions. I don't pull out from competitions. When my name ends up on the list, I want people to know he's going to the end of the competition. And I told myself that when I went pro, there was 2 things that would reevaluate my career: is pulling out from a show and getting last place in a strongman competition. Neither of those have happened. And I think that's just the pride I have with my name. And also just what I see as being an athlete is good athletes don't pull. I mean, Kobe Bryant talked about it, right? Like he wanted to please his fans. Like, I'm not saying I have a bunch of fans, but like, there's just some, I don't know. It's just pride of being an athlete. Like you just don't quit. People are watching you. And yeah, it just stuck with me. And then it became like the quote for like all my rehab and stuff, after the knee surgery. And then once you kind of get a snowball effect of a little bit of fans and now you're posting all the time, you're like, oh shit, like I can't quit now. Mm-hmm. So now I'm kind of stuck. So if I give up, I'm going to look like a dumbass. So I kind of have to keep going.
Well, do you think there's a point to where that becomes bad?
Yes. So I should frame never, never quit in kind of a different way. So yes, you could say never, never quit is like, you're always going to do strongman. I think of it as more as like giving your best in whatever you do. So at some point I'm going to say, I'm done with competitive strongman. It's not going to be forever, but am I going to quit being healthy? No. Am I going to quit, giving the best of my potential in whatever area I choose it in? I'm getting to points in my life where I'm going to have to transition into having a family, obviously running my business better, other growth, able to support my family members, able to support my mom, things like that. So, and even like all the mental health stuff, like, I have mental health issues, like not quitting there. Like it transcends strongman. It's just, that's where people see it, but never, never quit to me is just like giving your best and not giving up on yourself. And the thing that people see the most is going to be strongman. So I advertise it there, but I think people recognize that shirt means more. So I've had people, unfortunately I was not able to bring more to the podcast. I was going to give you a shirt, try to make you wear it on the podcast, but I just had more printed, but people buy them that unrelated to strongman. They are trying to get over cancer or trying to get over something else. And it's just something to remind them. It's a mantra. You're not going to quit. Mm-hmm. Never, never quit.
At least not when it's hard. That's the caveat I would put with that, where you can move on to different things.
Yes.
But don't do it when it's hard. Right? Because when it's the hardest, it's on the other side of that, whereas the success is.
Yep.
You know, so get through the hard shit and then move on to the next thing, right? Instead of, oh, this is too hard, I got to go do something else. I can't wrap my head around that one.
Right.
You know, that's just kind of the way I was raised as well. That's why I ask, can it become detrimental? Absolutely. Because there's some times where it's like, you know what, there's some shit I probably did for way too long, and I just didn't want to stop doing it because I saw it as quitting. And it's a mind fuck.
I probably should have quit strongman in some ways when I got hurt, because I recognized that as a point in my life where I didn't have like the personal side of my life and the business and where I was going all together. It was really only strongman was the only thing that was going well. I had a crap job. I was terrible in a relationship. I was just not a good person to be around. And before I went to that competition, it's funny how, you know, I mean, I believe in God, but I mean, we all feel this, these moments in our lives are like a turning point. And I knew going to that competition that something was going to happen that day. If I qualified for World's Strongest Man, it justified me to continue, I don't want to say behavior, but my lifestyle to make it to that pinnacle of going to World's Strongest Man. If I didn't, maybe it's time to stop being a dumbass and living at home and having a crap job, not making enough money because you tried and you didn't get there. But then I got hurt and it kind of threw a curveball on it, because if I quit when it was, you know, like you said, when it's hard, if I quit right after injury, no one would be mad at me. It happens all the time. But to me, that was like, I'm quitting, but I'm quitting not on my own terms, and I'm quitting when it's hard. So for me, coming back was be able to get back to my best. And I will say, I do have an urge to go back and do some heavyweight show at a high level, because I feel like once I do that, it's on my own terms, and then I can close that chapter completely. I've closed the 105 chapter. It's kind of closing this open chapter, maybe closing the high level strongman chapter, and then I can fully move on to business and family and other things. But yeah, but you're right. If things have gone differently, I didn't get hurt, maybe at that point I don't qualify. I say, Andrew, you got to change what you're doing. You got into the hard part. You proved you're a good strongman, but you're just not cut out to be World's Strongest Man caliber, and that's okay, and move on. So I'd probably say that to other people too. I'd say that at some point you're going to come to a point in your life with whether it's strongman or a business or a relationship or whatever, and you have to be like, is this something I should continue putting my energy into, or should I step back and try something else? It's not quitting, it's putting your energy where it matters.
Yeah. I think it's when, if God, I don't know if I've ever said this before, if I could go back and, because I hate that, if I could go back and give my younger self advice, you know, if I could go back and give my younger self advice to when I was 100% all in just with powerlifting and all that, and that was my identity, and I was trying to like wrap my head around, you know, the later chapters of all that, I would have told myself that, you know, I think a lot of times we get wrapped up in past memories. Like, this is what it felt like to win World's Strongest Man. This is what it felt like to do this. And, you know, up to that point, those were your best memories, where I would go back and tell myself a lot of your best memories are going to happen later, right? Because we get caught up in what we're doing and what we've done to where we don't think of, those are still great memories for me. They're awesome fucking memories for me. But a lot of really cool memories happened after, and a lot of real cool memories for me are yet out there in the future that I don't know because they haven't happened yet. Right. So that gives a different perspective, you know, kind of what that looks like. Cause I think for myself, I got wrapped up into trying to figure out how I could relive some of the previous things that I had, you know,
I'm guilty.
And not pausing to think that there could be really cool things, you know, there, which it's kind of fucking obvious, right? Because, you know, all the ones that you've achieved, you know, up to that point, including the last World's Strongest Man, were great fucking memories, really cool memories. And that happened after the 2014 one.
Right.
So it's so obvious, but yet sometimes we don't see the things that are right there in front.
There's a great quote, and someone actually sent me this book when I was going through a hard time. It's Gorilla Mindset, and the quote is, your memories are not as real as your dreams. And what it means is, like, we misremember so many things that they're not even the true memory, but dreams are always real. So what we're pursuing in like you're saying, the future. Yeah. So there is an element of I mean, I could talk about books for hours too, but there's the book called Time Paradox, and it talks about how you can have like a positive or negative experience in the past or the present or the future. And we always hear about people talk about, being in the present. So we want to remember the past things positively, but we're in the present. And in the future, we have to have a positive mindset as well. So we have to have a good balance. We have to be able to move between those things. But that quote is that the dreams are more important. Our memories are going to get skewed. Things I'm upset about from the past are probably not even really as factual as I think they are. It's all morphed. But yeah, I definitely agree the future is going to be better. And, I'm trying to focus on other things. Having a business. I look forward to the day my business is doing better. I'm going to have a family. Like, I'm sure having my first kid is going to beat, winning World's Strongest Man. And guess what? Almost a lot of the population has kids, but to me, it's going to be amazing. And so not everybody wins World's Strongest Man at whatever weight class. So it's going to be better than that. There was one other thing you said. I can't remember what, it's always live in the past. And it's tough because those highs are so high, but, I do try to remove some of that residue from the past. And it's really funny. A lot of good things happened to me in the last couple of months. I cleaned out my desk and I just burned a bunch of old stuff, old cards from people, like rules from a gym I got fired at, just like stuff. And it just like that physical act of burning it in my backyard at the house I just bought, which was a great accomplishment for me, which felt really good. And it's weird how it just remove some of that past residue that was negative. I'm not saying it's all gone, but sometimes it takes something like that and that event, and then you're able to move on and be a little more present. And I hope I continue to do that and get rid of, things that are negative influence or vibe or energy, and then stay in the present and look forward to the future. And
that kind of reminds me of the, years ago, I was told of the 5x5 rule. Like, if it's not going to matter to me in 5 years, don't let it occupy more than 5 minutes of my time today.
That's good.
So it's just a different thought process. If something comes in, you're like, you're pissed, and like, okay, what's this going to matter in 5 years?
I'm going to remember that because 5x5, I'm just thinking we're about to go train.
That's why I remembered it. Because it's 5x5.
That's solid. I should put that on a poster.
The next quote is, don't call it a comeback.
Man, I think that was just, everybody says it's a comeback. And to me, the second I got hurt, that's the comeback I think people are referring to. I never stopped. Like, before I'm sure we've all done dumb stuff around surgery. Like, you had Travis Rogers on here, right? Mm-hmm. And so he's freaking doing stuff like 3 days after his surgery. I did an axle clean and strict press on one leg. So, the other leg was like just kind of balancing, but primarily on the good leg. The day before surgery, I was already back. In my mind, I've already cleaned the implement that got me hurt. I'm already training with it. I never stopped training. I use Elite FTS bands, attached things in the house to do pump workouts like 3 times a day. It never occurred to me that I was done. And I think that mindset helped a lot. And then when I did my first, I did the qualifier for the most recent show I won, which was actually not Worlds. It's another show called Clash on the Coast, which tries to make claim of really being the world's strongest man 105, which I joke and I say, well, you don't have to worry about it because I won both of them.
Yeah.
But I made that poster before the qualifier, and I won. So I held the poster up and I'm like, I'm going to run with this. So I put it in my garage. Anyone that follows me on Instagram has seen that in my stories probably 100 times. I'll just literally take a picture before I train. Didn't even post my training. And now that poster's kind of served its purpose. But yeah, that don't call it a comeback is for all the people that, people kind of count you out. And it's like, no, bro, I never left. It's not a comeback if you never leave. And in my mind, I'm never leaving getting better as a strength athlete. And I'm never going to, and whatever as we talked about, like, you quit. When I'm done, no one's going to say it's a comeback. It's just, I chose to be done. I'm not going to go out by a knee injury. So.
And then the other one is, you're not that special.
So this one's, I haven't shared this one. I don't think I've been needing to do a post on it. So, a coach I worked with posted this. I don't know if he directed, if it was a message to me, because again, our memories are terrible, or it was in a group that he had on Facebook. But the core of what he was trying to say was, a lot of us think we're special as if we respond differently to training, right? Most training principles are for everyone. And whether it's a generational thing or just how people talk or how we're taught in school or whatever, we believe that we're special and we should be treated differently in how we train. Great. I kind of took that at the time because, you know, I grew up a little smarter than average in certain things, or maybe my parents told me I was special too much. You know, your parents love you, so they tell you you're special. And that's good. I think your parents should tell you you're special.
Yeah,
right? The inverse, if your parents tell you you're not special, you're not going to amount to anything, I think it's way more detrimental. But yeah, you know, obviously my parents love me, so, you know, they told me that, but I kind of took that as like, what do you mean I'm not special? I'm the second youngest pro strongman ever. I became multiple times strongman, so I was kind of like frustrated. And now looking at being a coach, I agree, I'm not that special with training response. But then I look over my career, I said, well, I kind of am a little special. Some of the things I've done are not things everybody can do. And I don't want to look at it from like an elitist perspective or even proving people wrong. But eventually you kind of look at the results and say, you know what? The average person isn't doing this. The average person is not able to achieve all these things. So it's a weird, I guess, dichotomy of like, I'm not special, maybe like DNA wise or how I respond to stimulus or whatever. But from a mindset perspective, I do think I must have something, and maybe it's not even tangible. Maybe you can't even test for it, but there's something like the core of my being that says I'm going to do great things. And that's a lot of ego, but I think the fact I got mad about that just goes to show I was able to accomplish things. Because if I had said, yeah, I'm not special, maybe I would have been okay winning a couple amateur shows or one pro card, doing one pro show and quitting. But yeah, I guess they're all kind of the same thing. You know, to be successful as an athlete, you kind of have to have a little bit of a superiority complex. So I'm going to pull this in a different way. You know, I struggle with mental health, and there have been times I wanted to hurt myself, harm myself, kill myself, whatever. And I told family members, I told my girlfriend, I don't think I could ever do it because I have too much ego and too much, I think too highly of myself, and maybe I'm elitist, but that quality is just as much a bad quality as a good quality because it's self-preservation. I would probably never hurt myself to the point I kill myself because I believe that I'm put on this earth for a purpose, a God-given purpose to do something and have an impact, and I'm a builder. So yeah, that quote I think sticks with me is because like, yes, it's true, but no, it's not. So I don't know if that answers the question. I probably sound like a lunatic, but I think everybody is put on this earth for some distinctively unique thing. And maybe you're not special in lifting, but there's something out there you're special in. So for a coach to tell me I'm not special kind of hurt my feelings, I guess. And it turns out that me being an athlete and being a good coach is the thing I'm put on this earth to do. And I'm going to do it to my best ability until it's time to do something else.
Do you think you could have taken that out of context?
Absolutely, Dave.
Yep.
Guess what? It worked for 9 years.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's like I'm seeing this as a reoccurring theme. Like you're finding things that you can be able to use to motivate, to drive, and to push you as fuel, right? And where I see the point that was being made, there, but there's this manipulation of what that is. To be able to say, fuck you, I'm going to use this.
This person did frame it. His posting was very polarizing. And I think things that upset you are usually things that you would probably say, right? Like people that are like you kind of know how to push your buttons.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to say mean things because then it's like I'm saying them mean about this person, but I know some of the shortcomings that I have. I might have said something the same way. And so I do think it was a little towards the negative side, but now looking back at it, that's the thing I probably needed to hear then. And even though I wasn't happy with it then, it benefited me and it was the thing I needed to hear. And sometimes that tough love or coaching or whatever is what a young, naive kid needs to learn. And I was a kid and I've grown up through a sport, being a teenager into a young adult to hopefully eventually being a man of knowing about life a little more. And I think it was good that somebody told me that at that time, and I was able to use it for fuel. And now looking back, that was probably the exact thing I needed to hear. I just didn't want to hear it.
Yeah. You just weren't ready to hear it.
No.
Right. So with the ski erg, what are some of the other challenges that you've done that are like that? Like just forget the ultra marathon and stuff like that. Just stupid shit that you've come up with your head to see if you could just do it.
I don't know why this came to my mind. When I was a kid, my brother Daniel and I probably made up the challenge to see who could like hold an ice pack the longest. And so he falls asleep. I don't know why we had an ice pack. Maybe we like got bruised. We were playing football. One of us got bruised or something. Our mom just threw us an ice pack. And I remember him falling asleep. And I must have had the ice pack. It was on my hand. I remember it was on my hand. And I'm like, oh my God, I can't feel my hand. And I thought something was wrong. I go in the bathroom, I get hot water, but I still can't feel it. And it's just like, it was funny, but I've always been attracted to just going a little bit further. Like I've literally gone out to a pool and just held my breath for as long as I could by myself. Maybe not so much now. I don't do that as much, but like, it's just something cool about being challenged. And my parents challenged me. My grandpa was a PE teacher, so he'd come to visit and he'd just make up little challenges. One was like hanging from the monkey bars, and I was fat. I could barely hang on. And then my brother beat my time and I had to go again. I beat his time. I'm just attracted to just being challenged. And that's why athletics has always been really good for me. And why strongman is great is, some of my competitors, I'm really loud and obnoxious, but like all those competitors made me better. And I freaking love them for it. Like even the people I don't get along with, if you've competed directly with me, you have literally made me a better person in some way. And I just love that challenge. And I'm hoping that I can take that more into like the business side, like we talked about. And in the personal side, though, I don't know how you like have objective measurements on relationships and family, but those challenges I think, are coming and I'm more prepared for them because I took them on in, I guess, more of a competitive sense in like athletics and stuff.
What's the hardest physical challenge you've ever done?
Oh man, hardest physical challenge. I do think the ultramarathon did break the actual ultramarathon. Not the skier guy was very prepared. The skier guy was very prepared for. I was actually really mad at myself for not pushing harder because I broke the record, but so it was a adaptive record. So I was seated, and it was actually the all-time world record at one time. But probably the ultramarathon. There was a point, your emotions, like I freaking cried during it. I mean, you're expending so much energy and you're having to push yourself. And unlike lifting where it's over, strongman's over in 60, 90 seconds. And it's not over in 90 seconds in ultramarathon. You're in the suck for 24, however long you go. And for me, it was, I think I ran for 6 a.m. to 11 p.m. or midnight. So 18 hours of basically moving the whole time. And you're in the suck the whole time, and you're trying to block it out with music or calling someone or staring at something or motivate yourself. Hey, when I get to that tree, okay, when I get to the next tree, but you're in the suck of it. So yeah, probably the ultra. And you're right. It's probably why I want to probably do it again when I'm much lighter and better.
So the ski erg was seated. Is that right? Yeah.
So it was not recommended to be standing. So I did seated, had the little attachments, and it was basically just lats and triceps and core, man. I tell you what, if you want to learn how strong your lats and core are, condition them to do 24 hours straight of basically a flexion / lat pull down hybrid. Yeah. Oh,
I'm only thinking about how chaffed your ass got.
So, good. I'm glad we're bringing this on the podcast. So, Dave, I thought of everything. I put a towel there so it absorbs the sweat. I changed my underwear in the middle. I put Gold Bond on. I put Body Glide under my armpits because, when you're big, you have your tricep against your lat. Like I said, I had the AC on, the fans. I mean, learning as an athlete, those logistics, I'll just reiterate, like learning every little thing. I don't think I did anything. Oh, the one thing I did wrong for that one I would change is obviously push harder. But use more caffeine actually. It was recommended to use caffeine more sparingly, and I should have just pushed it because I metabolize it very fast already. And when you're doing an event, you're metabolizing it even faster. So if I had gotten the caffeine from the start, even though my heart rate would have been elevated, I think I would have finished overall better. I did 100,000 meters, which is about a third of what I did in the 24 with a lot more caffeine. So I changed my strategy. So, like anything, don't change your strategy that's working. So
with, staying on that theme, what's one of the hardest training sessions that you've ever done that you think back on? Cause we all have certain sessions that we just resonate that for whatever reason.
Hardest training session.
Hardest or most memorable.
Okay. So it wasn't even that hard of a training session. We did some lower body or some event day. And then it was my older brother and one of my training partners at the time. We decided to take a keg out to the beach and carry it through the surf. And his family, was at a country club. They had a country club access. So we did it by his house. So we put the keg in my brother's like tiny little Saturn car and drove it out there. And we had to carry the keg probably, I don't even know, like maybe an eighth of a mile. out to and then I remember my foot got cut by a shell in the surf. It was just dumb stuff. We just wanted to like try it. And at the time, World's Strongest Man was like at the beach carrying stuff through water. But yeah, it was just anything I could emulate that was like World's Strongest Man. I just wanted to like feel like what it was like to be a strongman. I think it's just cool to imagine yourself being on TV, even when you're just training. But yeah, there were a couple times, 3-hour, 4-hour sessions, maybe train. There was, this is probably the best one. I'll finish on this one. Christmas, I loaded 400-pound stone for the first time. Actually, multiple Christmas sessions, I did amazing workouts. I loaded a 400-pound stone for the first time, but we had done a couple events before. We go inside, ate some food, and I'm like, I'm getting that 400-pound stone today. First time I ever attempted it. I loaded a 400-pound stone at 18 years old, so it would have been in 2010, I guess, and I was so pumped. 400-pound stone on a platform, and then my other training partner who wasn't there had to try it. He had to try it like 10 times to get the next time. He's older than me, stronger than me, but it felt so good. And another Christmas, I did a block press, 300-pound block press, 305-pound block press. It was just something about like a holiday with my brother, carved up on tons of food from the night before, and just loving training. I just love those holiday workouts because you can only train that when you have a home gym. Yeah, everything's closed, so it's just a really special. Those are just special moments, I think.
Now, most of your training has been in a home gym, right?
Yeah. So I trained almost up until I got my house in November of last year. I pretty much trained out my parents' garage, which I'm really blessed they allowed me to do that. It's hard for a parent to hear at like 15 years old their kid wants to be like world's strongest man level. I told my dad when I was like 14 or 15 I was going to win World's Strongest Man. Around it came out of my mouth. I sound like an idiot. I actually knock people on that now because what are the odds, right? I think 2 105 ones count for one whole one, maybe. I don't know. We might have to do the math on that. Probably not. Yeah. So it started in my parents' garage with an $80 rack off of Craigslist. Still have it. I'm gonna give it to my kids. But then I trained in like a gym went out of business by me, and it was really a poor gym owner. I'm not going to talk too much negativity about that because those problems can't be solved. But I had to train out of a storage unit. And I think those types of things, training in a hot garage, in a storage unit, outside in the street, even at my house now, like I'm outside in the backyard, it just molds you and just really wanting it. And I think that's lost now. And I just love that I came up through that because there's so many times I go to competition and things aren't going how, it's not it's not the setup. And I'm like, just imagine it's the garage. You've hit it 100 degrees, closed garage door, like 1 or 2 fans, no AC. You've hit records practically in the garage. Don't worry about it. And so those are things that the clients I had that train, I have a client that trains in a storage unit right now and he loves it. And I love watching his training videos. If you're watching this, Caleb, I freaking love your videos. Yeah, it's that grit, man. I just freaking love it.
Well, I can see advantages with that, but I can see disadvantages too.
Absolutely.
So when you weigh those two out, would you say that there's more advantages to that? Well, actually, let's explain what the disadvantages would be.
Yeah. So the disadvantage is, for me in Florida, is climate. And sweating a lot. I already have a high sweat rate. I think it affected me very negatively when I was prepping to try to qualify for World's Strongest Man. I did go to a lot of indoor facilities, but we didn't have a strongman. We still don't have a strongman gym where I live. I would say early on, get in that grit types, find out you love it. If you have a little bit of adversity as far as the training environment, heat, lack of equipment, that guarantees that you want to do the sport. And then once you have already done that, then obviously you want to pull and go towards, flat ground, good contest grade equipment. You're basically becoming more specialized. So you want less things to go wrong, but it builds that durability too. Like if you're training in a street or like the yoke is wobbly, but then when you get to high level, you're really strong. And so one misstep could be the end of your career. So I feel like maybe say the first 2, 3, 4 years, it's okay to be in an adverse situation. Now you've made it to pro, go train in a better equipped gym where you control more variables to the point where you can really peak your ability, right? So
you're in a position now where you can help the 14, 15 or 16-year-old kid that you used to be, with the strongman. And maybe some of your clients fit this. So rather than what I did earlier and say, if I could go back and tell myself, I don't want to say if you could go back and tell yourself, because it's a different situation, because you can actually tell other people
right.
who may be in the same position that you started through? What are you having them do that you didn't do or that you should have done?
Probably think about life in general, you know, a holistic thing, and just keeping their head on straight. I'm just going to shout out all my clients. I'm going to get through the whole list. So I have a client, Gabe. He came to me when I was at that previous gym, and, you know, you just see yourself in other people, and I see myself in him. So I gave him shoes to deadlift. You know, I've helped him get, equipment, whatever he needs. I mean, I want to support, I want to support people with my success anyways, but it's just special. And I see his determination. And this is a kid that worked at like a fast food chain job, and he used that money to pay for my coaching. 16 years old. And I'm not cheap. I'm not $50 a month. I knew what I had to do to become a strongman and buy every piece of equipment. So when I see that, it just like, I mean, I can't cry on the podcast, but I mean, I get emotional when I see his success. He did powerlifting meet, and he's like he's watching all your YouTube videos. He's watching YouTube videos. He's sending me questions. I'm like, man, this is me reincarnated. And I just love that, and that passion. It's like, if I can have two Gabes or two people that end up being like me and do better than me, then I've multiplied my impact on the world, and then that's going to trickle out further. So I just love that. But yeah, I think it's keep his head on straight and keep priorities, because I was a fuck up, and I am glad I'm not a fuck up anymore. But I mean, I lived at home too long. I didn't get a good job. I just didn't want to try at things. I just wanted to lift weights, and that's really stupid. And I want him to enjoy lifting, but man, I want him to have a good career, you know, better friends around him, be able to assess the people that should be around him that are going to be the best influence. And then maybe, I don't want to say I'm a mentor, but like, I want to be someone who you can be comfortable with. Like, I'm not a therapist, but I would hate to be a touch point that a client could have and come to me and tell me something difficult, and be able to be a human, be able to like say, hey, I understand you can't train right now. Something bad happened in your life. Like, it's okay. Because they're not, when I was coming up, there were like, I think my coach Mike was like one of the few people that really could step in and say that as a mentor. And it's sad that not everybody can do that. And as a male, I think it's extremely hard to say, hey, I'm struggling. I'm not saying he's struggling. I'm just saying, like, I take that relationship very important, or I put a high importance on that. And that triggers all my clients. Every client has a part of me, so to speak. I mean, not only my effort, but I see parts of me in every one of my clients. And I don't think I'll ever, we all have a roster, you know, you have a number of clients, but man, I don't think of numbers at all. These are all people, and I know their names, and I know where they live, and I know their spouse, and I, you know, where they train. So, yeah, I just want them to keep the priorities of their life and know that somebody cares about them. And if I do that, I guess I'll have a pretty good impact on the world.
But if I turn that back on you and said, if you had those priorities for yourself, would you have made it to where you are?
There's no one event that changed, you know, everything is a butterfly effect, but, I think I could have done a better job, but I mean, you can't go back on that now. And I think it's
a good answer. It's an honest answer, right? Because most people will say no.
Will say no to what?
They will say no. They wouldn't have. They would not have been. That they wouldn't have got to the same level had they had different circumstances or different mentoring.
I think I was too stubborn. I would have made it happen no matter what. I harshly told my girlfriend recently before this last competition, I said, I'm going to win whether you're with me or not. And it sounds really harsh, but the reality is, like, deep down in my core, I wanted to win, but I made it way more difficult on myself by not exceeding in other areas of my life, not having the resources to train harder, be at a better gym, not having the proper people around me, alienating myself from people. So those types of negative things that I maybe overcame or was good in spite of, I don't want other people to go through those. You need some adversity, but I probably created adversity for myself rather than eliminate it at times. So when I coach, I want to be able to be that sounding board. And if I see a negative influence on an athlete, I want to be able to say, hey, this might not be the best thing for you, or you might need to move your energy around, but I still think they can achieve it without doing what I did, you know, I don't want to say going all in, but, without it being their whole life, because even now I'm much more relaxed and I'm still successful as an athlete. And there, like you said, there's a lot more time in the day to do more stuff. And I just didn't, I was lazy. I was or what was it? Selectively lazy?
Selectively lazy.
I was selectively lazy, and I want them to be selectively driven. I don't know.
Yeah. What would be your biggest pet peeve then?
Of a client?
In general.
Biggest pet peeve. Oh man.
I don't want to say of a client, right? Okay. Because you have clients.
Gotcha. Well, see, that's why it's hard for me to think of one, because I think every client, clients work themselves. If you're not a good fit, they figure it out and they usually end up stop working with you. The rare occasion. Pet peeve for me, man, that's a tough one, Dave. I probably have a lot. I just can't think of. Maybe do you have one?
Fucking excuses. Stuff like that is. Instead of, for me, I guess it would be instead of taking, responsibility and accountability, they look for excuses, put shit on other people instead of, because it's no matter, let's say I own a business, right? I don't care what happens in this business. Ultimately, it's my fault.
Right.
It doesn't matter what it is, right? It's the end of the day, I'm accountable. I'm responsible for all of it. Where, with others, I'll see that if something's wrong, it's never their fault. It's always somebody else's fault. This went bad because of this. This went bad because this, or this. And I can dissect that and always kind of look and say, well, you didn't even have to be there in the first place. So you made the choice to go. Right. So it could be, granted, I know there's a lot of shit that goes on politically in strongman, same way it is powerlifting and all this other kind of crap. And there's a lot of stuff that can get lost, in the chatter, and a lot of bullshit and a lot of bias and all this other kind of crap. But you still decided to do it. You know what I'm saying? So you can bitch all you want to bitch, but at the end of the day.
Oh, I'm a complainer. And my mom would say that. And it's something I'm working on. And I agree wholeheartedly with what you're saying. I mean, it's those two wolves, man. They're fighting, It's like, I want to blame people. I want to be mad. I want to be pissed off. I want to complain. But when I sit by myself, don't think for a second, I don't think it's not my own damn fault.
Oh, yeah.
And I maybe the pet peeve is not so much a pet peeve, you got to have people around you that are going to keep you in check. And sometimes people are afraid to keep you in check, or maybe they never had someone that kept them in check. But, having mentors, having a coach in both business and training that are kind of, business is a little personal, right? If I fail, it's me personally will fail. Mm-hmm. I am my brand right now. I don't have anyone else working for me. So Paul reminds me, like, he holds me accountable. Like, even today, he has an email every Monday I have to fill out, and I fill it out. I'm going to fill it out at some point today. I already have it in the document. Keeps me accountable. I have my coach, Mike, when I tell him something, like, he's not afraid to tell me, like, do you really think that's the best thing to do? So I think my pet peeve would probably be to myself would be, I'm mad at myself maybe a little bit for not having those people around that kept me in check, or too afraid to say something. And I said to my girlfriend, and I said, you got to keep me in check no matter how. And it's not like, okay, it's my responsibility. I'm saying, don't be afraid to keep me in check is how I should frame this. Don't be afraid, because that's what needs to be done. And when you don't keep people in check, behaviors or patterns repeat themselves, because our behaviors are a product of how we're either punished or rewarded, right? So if you reward a behavior, it's repeated. If you punish it, theoretically, it should diminish or be gone. So probably the pet peeve is my own personal doing, not keeping myself in check, or not being aware of, where I fell short. I don't know if that really counts as
I know, but I got an interesting question that comes with this. Do you think those people were there during the start of your strongman career, but you just didn't listen to them?
Probably.
Right. And then as you got better in strongman, they weren't there because you're better than the people that you would be around. So now they don't feel like they can say something to you because you're better ranked, you're stronger, you're in better condition. So you're like the top of the crew, leader of the crew, whatever it is,
right.
So they kind of go away. I see this happen in business, right? And where somebody that have people around them in business, obviously when you start, everybody's supportive. Then you start to get, somewhat successful there.
Oh, is that what happens?
Yeah.
I'm not that successful yet.
No. When you start, everybody's like, oh, it's great. And then then shortly thereafter, everybody thinks you make $200,000 a year and you're a fucking millionaire because you have your own business. And then it just becomes this other type of thing. But as I've seen, as you become better at anything, right, the people that are willing to call you out on your own bullshit begin to decline. Like, I wonder how many people Elon Musk has calling him out on his bull. Well, I guess the press, right? So you've positioned yourself in such a way with a business mentor and a coach to be able to have those people there. to be able to keep you in check, right? Mm-hmm. Now, if you didn't have those people, like if you weren't going out and hiring those people to be able to help do that, then where are those people? You see what I'm saying?
Right.
Like, just take those away.
Because I've molded my, I guess, life, because my clients are there because they want to be, and they're not going to push back ever enough to say you're a fuck up.
No.
I guess relationships could.
Critics, you're going to ignore.
Hopefully, right?
Yeah. Well, you do. I mean, you can get mad of it, but you're not taking their opinion seriously.
Right. I'm not changing my business format or how I compete. Yeah. I guess the best example is because, like I said, I have a unique experience being a teenage strongman than now being an adult, or like, being a teenager and now being an adult. I probably had to ignore some of those people keeping me in check or keep me realistic. I'll use that word, because if I listened to too many of those people, I would have not seen my full potential. So I think that's kind of what happened is, I had adults that were saying certain things about me prioritizing strongman, or maybe you should do this or that. But if I listened too much to that, I would have been like, yeah, you're right. I'm not going to become anybody in this, or I'm not going to be able to run my, I work for someone who I think, how do I put this? He believed in me, but he wanted me to work for him. So like, you could never empower me enough to go do my own business, right? Because then I can't work for you anymore. So that person's not going to be, hey, Andrew, you know what? This isn't a place for you to grow to your full potential. I need you to leave. So I had to wait to be fired in that situation. And I'm not saying it wasn't anything I did. I mean, I was a factor, right? It always takes two. But I'm saying, in hindsight, if he hadn't fired me, how long do I stay there? Because he was never going to say, Andrew, you've outgrown this place, or this is not your calling. So I probably did have those people the whole time, but I probably ignored them out of being stubborn to achieving my goal. And now, like you say, I've been able to structure my life in a way where I ignore a lot of negativity. I'm at my house. I'm updating my online clients. I choose what social media I see, which I need to do a better job of the algorithms, right? We control what we see and, put in our bodies, food and everything we consume. But yeah, that's interesting. I probably did have people reach out and I probably either ignored them or, like you said, I was blind.
Well, again, it's selective, right? Yeah. Because if you listen to everybody, then you wouldn't do anything.
Right. You'd be paralyzed.
Yeah. Most people, that's just how it is, but you have to always have people around that are willing to call you out on your own bullshit. If it's, spouse, significant other, wife, somebody, that you're willing to listen to as well. I mean, may get pissed after they say it, but then as you said, it's okay to get pissed,
right?
But then when you digest it later and then really think about it, that's, now for a lot of people, they don't have that. That's what I'm saying. They get to that certain point, then that's not there. Then there's nobody to call them out on their bullshit. And then there's the decline that comes very shortly thereafter. This is kind of along the realms of mindset, right? Which is a big, broad freaking category,
right?
With, you've kind of touched on it with your clients in multiple categories, but with what mindset, because you have a unique mindset, right? You do a ski erg for fucking 24 hours. I mean, you come up with these different things. It's a unique mindset that can be a good and bad thing. You learn how to control it. It can become a great thing, right? So and I think it's a necessary thing, by the way,
right?
It's obsessive or whatever it is. It's a necessary thing, good and bad. When it can be controlled, it's fucking unstoppable. That everybody else fucking knows that. If you see others that don't have that, then how do you go about trying to mentor that?
Oh, mentor. Okay.
I can't say explain because we can sit here and try and we're not.
Yeah. That's interesting. So I probably like you said, I can recognize when I see it, but what do I do when I don't see it, but they're still wanting to do strongman or compete? I think their goals has become more realistic. And I think it's maybe at a really young age, maybe let's say teenage to like mid 20s, right? Usually that's the age where you're not really aware. You know what I mean? You're not you don't know yourself, all this kind of other stuff. But like if I get a middle-aged person want to do strongman, they've kind of figured out they're not going to World's Strongest Man. I never have to have that conversation with them. If I get a teenager, and I've had a couple of teenagers, not the one I mentioned, because his goal is powerlifting. He loves powerlifting. He's probably, man, if I brought him back to me, he'd be stoked. But I've had to tell him like, hey man, this is not very realistic, or like you have to focus on college, right? Because I see that unless you are literally me times 10, you're not going to, because I've gotten close and I haven't gotten there. And I know what I had to do. And so unless you're willing to do that, plus obviously more, or do it better, or be built better, or have better genetics, and he doesn't, then yeah. But yeah, that doesn't come up too much, I think, because someone that can, I'm going to try to get out of the question by logic, because someone that is paying for my service has the resources, and therefore has probably gotten to some level in their life where they kind of know where they're at. You know, I'm not a budget coach. So if you're investing this much, you have more realistic goals than someone just hop in the sport in like 3 months. Right. But how I would address it with someone who doesn't have the mindset, man, I guess you just have to just keep testing them. Right. Like I'm sure tons of people want to come here and train, right? They find out you have a compound. And, I want to come train them down the street. And what do? You give them like a hard sled workout and make them throw up. That person doesn't come back. You know, you have to make them do something really hard. I used to have a challenge where we carried a 200-pound sandbag around my parents' house for laps. And you could just see who had it, because if you challenged them or bet against them or did something and they dropped it when you knew they had another 50 feet or another half a lap or whatever, you knew that person wasn't in it for the long haul. And I think that identifies is when you put them in like those hard situations and how they respond to it. I think that's everything, right? I mean, I've never been in the military, but like, I'm sure that's how they figured it out pretty quick in the military, you know, and there's the whole book on grit, you know, there's no one factor. It's like it's an X factor. And that's why I love strongman, is because it's not numbers. It's who has the grit. You can look at their squat, their deadlift, you can look at their yoke time, but every event's different. And you can look at all the numbers on the paper, and I'll tell you what, I have probably never been the guy on the numbers on the paper that's supposed to win the competition, but there must be some X factor, and I have it, and I can tell the competitors that have it, because when I go against I'm changing your question a little bit because it's more competitors, but when I walk into a room with all the athletes, a most recent competition, I could tell. It's in their eyes. It's in how they respond to me talking to them. It's how they walk into the room. It's how they walk out when they go out to the implement. And then I can tell the ones that don't have it, because when I challenge them, they don't push back, or they kind of get a little smaller. And it sounds like such a dick thing to do, but every good athlete does it because they test it. And I'll tell you what, I had 2 people in my heat in this last competition, and I'm gonna name drop them again. Vince and John did this. I tried to mess with both of them because I knew they were good competitors, and both of them shot back at me. And I was like, okay, they got that. And they didn't beat me that day. And luckily I'm retired from 105, so they can't beat me at 105. But like, if we kept going, eventually they're both going to beat me, because they have that it factor. And you just know it when you're in a room with someone else that has, like, you obviously have it. Like, probably 99% of the people that come to these doors that train with you have that it factor. And it's just cool to be around those people. But you know immediately that person that doesn't, when the room is full of a ton of those people.
With that in mind, not every training day is a good day. You know, not every day do you want to go train. No. Right. So
I just want to smoke cigars and go to the park with my dog.
Yeah. Okay. So there becomes the battle, right? Because you have that factor, right? And then as you're younger coming up through, I don't want to say you're hungrier, right? But in a way you kind of are. And then you hit this secondary phase, you know, whatever it is. And that's, if we're talking to people and we're like, oh yeah, you know, don't worry about skipping a workout. You tell that to you when you were fucking 17.
Oh no, yeah.
you see, so it's that gap, you know, trying to bridge that gap is the question. Like, how do you bridge that gap? Because you don't want to stifle.
Oh, like being able to skip a workout and being realistic.
Or just being able, because that you want to see that. Right? When they're coming up through.
Oh, that they're not skipping workout. They'll do whatever it takes.
No, you want to see that that's their mindset.
That they will skip.
Well, no, that their mindset is they're going to do whatever it takes to be able to get there. Right? And the complexity becomes, you know, with experience, you learn, right? But if you're trying to mentor people who are moving through this thing, is there becomes a point where when you're younger, you think the all-in is training harder, never fucking missing, never missing a meal, boom, boom, boom. All this has to be rock solid on time. If you don't do one little fucking thing,
the whole thing gets thrown out.
It's all you fucking failed, right? And then later on, you realize, no, that's not the right thing. It's actually more optimal to actually manage this, right? To where that conversation then looks like all in actually is being more optimal.
Yes.
And so if you don't have the balls or the grit to be able to back off when you're supposed to back off, then you're really not all in.
Right. You brought this same question up with Michael Della Pava, I think.
Yeah.
It's a great question. And it's the maturity aspect. So I'll answer from the athlete side, and we've been talking about clients a lot. Athlete side, biggest thing I learned, I'm starting to smoke cigars. We talked about it off the podcast, like just being able to chill and relax. And it's tough because there's that, I don't want to say I think, so a lot of people are like caught up in the past, like, what they did in high school. Like, I'm 30 now. So this would be the age where people start talking about their glory days, right? Maybe 30. I don't know. I've only been 30 this one time, so I don't know. But I think there's some good part of that. I see myself as like just graduating college. I'm an adult, but I'm still very new to this life. And I think keeping that like youth mindset is really helpful. But from a standpoint of training, I'm a little beat up. I've got some mileage on me, and my coach Mike, and also just what I see is I don't have to do as much as my competitors because for me, pulling back on things like yoke walk or pulling back on how frequently I train X, Y, or Z is, like you said, all in. And it's tough because you want to keep doing more and you feel like you're shorting yourself. And I guess kind of the middle ground for me is, okay, if I'm not all in on training, let me put that emphasis on the diet. Okay, I've already got the diet in check enough. Okay, let me put that on sleep, which I'm still struggling with a lot. Or let me put that on the other aspects of my life that will support the rest. So getting the business up so I have more resources to afford better training equipment, AC in my garage, things like that. Having the relationships that support me. So the all in becomes looking at the bigger picture, and now I'm all in for real. Because all in before was just training, and now it's getting a little broader. And with the client side, I think it's allowing them not to judge themselves. So I had a client want to take off a week because he got a new job. That's stressful. He's trying to do a diet. He's trying to do training. I said, okay, that's fine. Take off a week. You need it. I'm saying it's okay. So now he feels better because I'm justifying his behavior as what you should do. Just focus on your diet this week. That'll be your win this week. Get in your job, feel comfortable with your job, and try to do your best on your diet you can. And he did. Now this week he's back to training. And I guarantee you when I see the check-in, that's going to come up. And it might not be 100% yet, but then it'll be back. And then guess what? Now he added a job, his diet's improved, and his training over the course of 2, 3, 4 weeks versus if he went all in that first week of work and he was overwhelmed with trying to train for 2 hours, trying to prep all his meals and get a new job, and he's got a spouse, he might have thrown it all out the window and taken a month off and just completely fucked himself. So I think that's a good perspective to have there. And you said one other thing about the all in and taking time off, and I lost it on what I was going to say because it was about clients. But another elite FTS athlete is Matt Mills, and I learned from him. I did a Plat Plus show. It's where he won his pro card in 2011, I think, in Orlando. And we went out to eat, and I ate way too much, as if I burned so many calories doing next to no work. And somebody said, "Hey Matt, when are you getting back to training?" He said, "Oh, probably Tuesday." And this is Saturday or Sunday. And I thought, interesting. He didn't necessarily train hard, but he kept the habit. And I think that's an important thing is like, it's okay to train 3 or 4 times a week all the time. But like after this last show, I've been doing rehab stuff. Sometimes like 30, 45 minutes. That's it. I mean, I only did about a 30-minute workout here, and I might do a little bit more later, train some arms or something, but it's not going to be very much. And that's okay, but I'm keeping the habit. So I know that next week I'll do 3 days, and I haven't missed a week since I was like 15 or 16. I read an article about a football team, just all the sacrifice you make and not missing practice. And, and I was like, okay, that's what I'm going to do. And I never missed a week. And when you keep a habit, no matter how decreased the effort, it's easier to keep it a longer period of time. And I have not been the most consistent athlete, and I've been neurotic, and we talked about all the events. I was all over the place, but at least I kept the train habit. So it's much easier to stack those habits when you at least have one. And, from like a non-athletic standpoint is like, I make my bed every morning. It sounds so freaking silly. My mom's so proud of me now, but like I made my bed before I had a 5:15 flight. I left my house at 3:15. I made my bed at 3 a.m. in the morning. To be honest, I have not woken up that early in forever. And my average wake up time is probably like 10 a.m. I made my bed because when I get home, it's going to feel good. It's a win. And that's a habit. I built all the habits after that. I have to weigh myself. I have to eat breakfast, go for a walk, those types of things. So I think all in is keeping the habit, but judging the amount of effort at the time. And then when it's time to ramp up that effort, when you get ready for a contest, you're going to have to spend 3 hours in the gym because it takes a long time to set up strongman stuff. But then after, okay, time to go focus on your business and your relationships, and you bring down that effort, but you still keep the habit. You still go out and train a little bit. And I have the convenience of a home gym. Best thing in the world. So,
no, I think that's a huge point right there is you start taking things out, then they get replaced.
Right. It's all stacked, and you can just interchange those because you have like a foundation of something. But if you never, I mean, we all wake up at some point in the day, right? I mean, if we woke up the day we're alive, but like even just wake up the same time every day, that's a foundation of something, and you build from that. And every business, every athlete has some structure. I can't think of any athlete that had zero structure. Even the most neurotic athlete has at least one core thing they have to do every day, even if it's driving to the gym. Even at that time varies. They drive to the gym. Okay, eat your Rice Krispie bar in the car before you go to the gym. Okay, cool. Now you have intra workout or what? Or pre workout. So yeah.
Were there any questions you thought I was going to ask that I didn't ask, or any things that not questions, any things you thought I was going to bring up I didn't bring up?
I'm trying to think of anything that would be helpful to people because I think if I leave anything on the podcast, it would probably be, there's a lot of facets to who I am as a person. And I know a lot of people see my competitive aspect. We talked about, that mindset. And I'm loud, I'm obnoxious, I swear, I'm intense, I yell, I scream, I complain, all these, the very intense emotional thing. And it's very compartmentalized. And I think it's okay to use that emotion. And it has to be, like we said, controlled. But, people are really multifaceted. And I love, I have a bunch of case studies. I have clients, and I love seeing their other hobbies and other things they're into and other passions. I mean, I love seeing even the guy who's training, he's in a storage unit, but I see his post of his wife and his kids, he's a basketball coach. So like, that's really cool to see those other aspects and see their growth in other areas. So you can be a really uptight, like explosive, emotional athlete, and that's okay. And there are times I think maybe I've gone a little too far, or maybe people don't like that personality, but I've worked really hard on not having that all the time. Because when I was younger, I was that angry, explosive, like if I had a heart rate monitor, it'd been up all the time. And now I'm more parasympathetic. I'm that person when it comes time to be that person. And like right now on the podcast with you, I'm chill. Like I'm enjoying this. I'm present. I'm not worried about other things. I think that's a maturity thing. And then I guess I have another thing to leave too is, I'm just very grateful. Sometimes like in the complaining or the intensity of competition, people think maybe I'm not as grateful because I'm pointing out problems, and maybe I have solutions, maybe I don't. And maybe I'll never get asked about my solutions or whatnot. But I'm very grateful. And even though I have an ego and I have pride, I'm very humbled by the fact I'm even doing this, because when you enter a sport like this sport, which is it's a long game, right? You don't become a professional strongman in 1 year, and no one thinks that. I don't think even the most naive person does. We talked about growth, but like, I'm humbled to be here because I should have been beaten so many times. I should have lost so many times. There's so many people better than me. And so I'm just blessed to even be able to do this because, like I said, there's so many hurdles I overcame, and you write one thing here, they're a little different. I don't achieve it. So while I'm cocky and I'm going to say I'm going to win, I'm going to walk in the room and be the badass or whatever, I know that God didn't give just me those gifts. He gave other people those gifts. And right now is my time, and that's great. And I'm working on giving that time to other people. That's why I retired, because I want other people to win. And like, some of the guys I beat in the last competition, I want them to win. I'll say right now, like the guy who got second place by half a point, he's going to win America's Strongest Man this year. I'm just going to put on the podcast. He's going to have to do it. So if Dan Hughes is listening, he's going to win America's Strongest Man. And the guy got third. I consider him a friend, and his name's Matt McKeegan. And I think he's going to go to OSG, and he's going to I'm going to say he's going to win OSG. So I'm going to give one to each of them. But like, I think that's the call right here. And like, yeah, I will beat them every time I compete against them. Every time. That's the athlete in me. The person and human in me, I know they're going to come up and they're going to be better than me. They're going to succeed me. And I'm going to be really happy about it because I'm humble, because even though it doesn't look like it, I know that God could give me other gifts or other opportunities, and it not happen. And he gave me just the right amount of opportunities. And I'm just really blessed. And then I get to be at Elite FTS. I mean, praying off articles and I've been here before and it was surreal, but like I get to talk to you and like just all the articles I've read, like In the Void and, you're going through like, identity crisis of like having to leave powerlifting. And then everyone I've heard that's talked to you said like, you're just like the business guru, and like, no, you just, you know, and so to have opportunity to have your time here is just freaking amazing. So, yeah, I'm just really grateful. So I hope people, understand that like I'm an asshole in competition, and I'll probably always be that way, but I've learned a lot from my mistakes from being a teenager to a young adult. And I would like to think that now as a grown person, I'm a much different person. And yes, I'm going to beat you every time I compete against you, because that's my goal. Because if I thought anything else, I wouldn't be a competitor.
Yes.
But later on, we can have drinks. We can smoke a cigar. I'm probably not going to drink much anymore. I'm just going to smoke cigars, and we can hang out. And I want you to win. And if there was a way everybody could win, that'd be great. But then we wouldn't have competition, and we wouldn't drive each other to push for something. And I hope someone hangs my photo up or is pissed that I beat them. And I hope they work harder. And whether I'm competing or not, I hope they succeed what I left, because that's the whole point of sport, is to push it.
Yes.
You know, under the same standards and stuff like that. But like, you know, push the envelope.
All right. Thank you for the compliments. I appreciate that. Yeah. I appreciate your time coming out and sitting down with me. It's been a great podcast. I got a great closing. We're done. You don't want to leave people stranded. If we're going to do this, because somebody's going to have to always be there. Yeah. You know, one of us would have to always be there, because it was a different.
At the time, all of us started training pretty much together.
You know, you were one of the first, you know, just to start training some of the lifts somewhere else. And your deadlift, you know, went like 100 pounds
for me.